I will call this meeting of the San Marcos City Council to order. This is a regular meeting. It is Tuesday, April 4th of 2023, and the time is 6 p.m. Mr. Trevino, would you call roll for us, please?
Yes, Mr. Prather.
Here.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Gleason.
Here.
Mayor Houston.
Here.
Ms. Garza.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Mendoza.
Here.
Here we have a quorum present.
Okay, and this evening, our invocation will be provided by Chaplain Mike Hollifield from the San Marcos Police. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am. If it be appropriate, please bow your head. Lord, we give you thanks for the freedom we have to be here tonight. We are blessed to live in this great city of San Marcos. We pray for your continued blessings and protection over our city and all who live here. Thank you, Lord, for our mayor, for our city council, for our city manager, our city leaders, and staff. Thank you for their hard work and dedication and sacrifice. May they stay true to the mission before them. May they never neglect or abuse their authority, but that they would stand firm for truth and justice. May you continue to bless them and their families and their homes abundantly. We pray for this city council meeting. Give the city council members wisdom and guidance as they deliberate on the items before them. Give each of them a sense of welfare and true needs for our people of San Marcos. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, if you will join me in the pledges of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Sorry about that. Okay, and we will, as always, next is our citizen comment time period. And our first speaker is Ramona Brown. Is Ramona Brown here? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't read my stuff. Apologies. City Council welcomes comments at regular meetings. Persons wishing to speak during the citizen comment portion of the meeting must have emailed citizen comment at sanmarcostx.gov prior to noon the day of the meeting. If needed, a call-in number and link were provided. Otherwise, you may sign up at 5:45 the day of the meeting, before 5:45. Speakers may speak once during the citizen comment time period. If you speak during that time period on a public hearing topic, we ask that you not speak again at the public hearing on the same topic. A timer is displayed on the screen. After you state your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. You will see that you're in the green bar when you start. When you have 20 seconds left or less, you'll be in the yellow part. And when it says red and your time to speak is up, your time to speak is up. The mayor and council will endeavor to ensure that meetings are conducted in a courteous manner and in an atmosphere free of defamation, intimidation, personal affronts, profanity, or threats of violence. And now it's your turn to speak. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ramona Brown. I live at 332 Perry Street. Before I speak today, I want to acknowledge this region's land, waterways, and original stewards. Central Texas is home to many sacred waterways that have been sources of life and community for the original peoples of this land and region. We honor the original peoples, including the Cuilatecan and Miacan Garza, all federal and state recognized tribes, and all the American Indian and indigenous peoples and communities who have been or have become a part of these lands and territories in Texas. I purchased my home here in San Marcos not even a year ago. As a new voter and taxpayer, I am here today to learn more about how the San Marcos City Council operates and to familiarize myself with the unique and diverse approaches each one of you offer while representing the people that voted for you. I chose to live in San Marcos because I heard that San Marcos cared about their people and Sacred River. However, in the short time I have been here, I have some concerns. Will the city prioritize developers over people? Is the city silencing East Side voices in the name of growth and empty promises of jobs? Do community voices have an impact at all, or is all of this performative? Furthermore, I have specific concerns of how the SMART terminal is going to impact me as a taxpayer because I haven't seen a cost analysis. I have read your FAQs, and I have been keeping up with the relationship between the developer and Smurf on Facebook. I am thankful for the work Smurf is doing to protect our rivers. However, what I have not seen is anyone who is going to protect us, the community. At the last P&Z meeting, Agnew said that his choice to vote for SMART, which was based on a single letter from an organization representing the river, was because the community were basically nobodies. Well, he didn't exactly say nobodies, but that is exactly how I felt. I almost didn't come here today. However, I refuse to believe that the City Council shares his same views. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Next is Lisa Marie Capoletta, who joins us online. Following her, if y'all want to get ready, will be Noah Brock, Mary Beth Harper, Anna Juarez, Annie Donovan, and after that will be Claude Aurelius, Anita Collins, Olivia Fatal, and Joy Jungers. Ms. Capoletta.
Good evening. My name is Professor Lisa Marie Capoletta. I live at 1322 Belvin. They call me LMC. I wanted to wish everybody a happy Holy Week as we move towards our devotion for Good Friday, and then obviously our Savior's resurrection on Sunday. We appear to be stuck in the narrative that the City of San Marcos can better regulate the SMART Terminal project. The applicant has come to us and is asked to be annexed to the city. The applicant said that they would follow all stipulations for regulations as set forth by the city. Am I correct to assume that they did this voluntarily? We are being told that they are agreeing to these conditions. My question is, could not Caldwell County oversee this development with all parties involved, agree to the terms and the stipulations on the regulation as drafted by the City of San Marcos? I too also have a concern about the Smurf letter. It's referenced in the P&Z, and I would encourage every member of the public to watch the very demeaning comments made by Commissioner Agnew towards the end of the meeting, and I felt very bad for the citizens, his behavior and his tone and his verbal advocacy. Additionally, it was not referenced online in the packet, creating a situation where individuals like me had to file an open records request, and I received mine on Monday, almost a week after the meeting. I believe that Smurf is using tunnel vision, and they're trying to apply a Band-Aid to a massive wound, which maybe a tourniquet could solve. And in my metaphor, I don't even think a tourniquet could solve a massive industrial complex of which these individuals did not vote for you to be put in office. She asked just for more protection, but it doesn't solve the trauma wound. Continually, the citizens and the residents in the area in both San Marcos and surrounding counties have asked for a monetary cost-benefit analysis to pay for the wastewater and the fire department infrastructure. $50 million is what the fire chief is telling us, and we all know without that fire department, the developer does not get his insurance, which means that the project is a no-go. Which also begs the question of the elephant in the room: will they turn around and sell the property like the last developer? We don't even know how much wastewater will cost us, that infrastructure. We don't know what the impacts of those lines going across the community, and we all know he needs that instead of septic so he can have larger land mass. In addition to the lack of the monetary cost-benefit analysis provided by the city, we know that there are flood implications. There are air quality particulate toxins which children should not, and the elderly and those who are healthy should not be exposed. We don't know. There are a lot of unanswered questions that have been occurred, and I would implore you to not take one letter of a Band-Aid, an attempt to solve a trauma wound. It's just very, very concerning what has transpired. Thank you for your time. God bless San Marcos, and happy Easter to all.
Noah Brock is next.
Hi, members of City Council. My name is Noah Brock, and I'm mostly here to introduce myself and talk about who I am and why I'm here and why my voice should count, I guess. I've been coming to these meetings since I found out about the SMART terminal, but ultimately, I want you to get to know me. I can look you up online, you're public figures, I can find out plenty of information about you, but you have no idea who I am. So let me explain that to you. I grew up in Florida. I lived there most of my life, and I ended up attending Florida State University to get a degree in art. I'm a sculptor. And while I was there, I learned a lot of different things, and I learned what I was good at. I'm good at analyzing data. I'm good at collecting data. I'm good at talking with people. And I lived in Tallahassee for 12 years. I worked for the university for at least 3 years before I actually went back and got my master's. And in that time, I got to teach. I got to interact with students. And I taught a wide range of things from like metal casting all the way to something called sculpting for animal enrichment, where I worked with Disney World. And after that, when I got my degree in 2016, I was appointed to the operations manager at the Facility for Arts Research, where I worked with faculty members to do cutting-edge research using cutting-edge equipment like CNC routers, laser cutters, 3D printers. Ultimately, I didn't want to stay in Tallahassee. I felt limited there. I ended up applying all over the US. I got a position at University of the Arts in Philadelphia, where I built a makerspace from the ground up. They hired me through a Zoom meeting to go and do that for them because they understood what my expertise were. And I did that. I moved there 1,000 miles away and learned that ultimately I didn't like living in an urban environment. I taught classes there, I ran that space, I managed student workers, but I missed that small town feel. Tallahassee did have that small town feel. I missed that feel of Florida, the climate. And this position at Texas State University popped up on my radar. I applied, they flew me out here, I interviewed, I got the position to build a makerspace in the Alkeck Library. And that was in 2019. I moved here because I was swayed by the charm of San Marcos. And it was a place that I knew I could set my roots down. I could actually build a life here. So we built a makerspace. I'm always tracking data on that every single time. And you want to know what the top major is in that makerspace that comes in? The whole campus can come into this? Computer science. Second is interior design. Third is agriculture. And those might be areas that you might not even realize. You don't have to have a degree in something to be an expert at it. And all of this data we collected for that P&Z meeting last week was ignored out of 5 out of the 9 members. I asked at Q&A, who read it? Only 4 members. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mary Beth Harper.
My name's Mary Beth Harper. I live in the Martindale ETJ, and I want to stay in the Martindale ETJ. Okay, first of all, I do agree with annexation of the smart terminal. These other people may not. I understand the reasoning to annex. The original agreement, 888 acres from 2019, did have air and rail. That's why it was called SMART. Now then it should be just called truck terminal. There's no air, no rail. And also there's no end users, we don't know who's going to build out there. Okay, the main reason I want this terminal to be in the San Marcos city limits is because San Marcos does have very strong development codes. Caldwell County has very little, very minimal. Plus, Caldwell County is very poor. Okay, I do not agree with the heavy industry zoning over that entire 2,000 acres. Okay, although planning and zoning did vote to allow the heavy zoning. The citizens of San Marcos will not be affected by this heavy industry zoning. It's kind of like not in my backyard. We're out way east of San Marcos, so y'all won't be affected. But, oh, let's go ahead and have it. Okay, third thing here, one of the waiver to the development agreement was a 15 to 20 foot cut and fill. Okay, the original agreement back in 2019 allowed 8 feet. That means the developer now can dig down 15 to 20 feet and then pile up dirt 15 to 20 feet. Most of the land is flat, so why have 15 to 20 feet cut and fill? This will affect the shallow water wells of all my neighbors. Okay, the wells are only like 20 to 70 feet deep. The wells on my farm are just 15 feet below surface. So, you know, that's the height of that cut and fill. Now, main thing here is the cost to the taxpayers of San Marcos. I don't live in San Marcos, so this is not going to affect me directly. Okay, who is paying for the cost of the sewer line that's going to go from this project back to the San San Marcos sewage plant, wastewater treatment plant. Okay, this is 1.5 to 2 miles long pipeline, and it's going from whatever the smart terminal thing is over to the sewage plant. Okay, currently there's surveyors all over, have been out on my property and also on my neighbors surveying for this pipeline. And the council voted several years ago to pay for costs to extend the sewer and water lines out to the original agreement, so taxpayers paying for that. Okay, the developer says he will pay for cost that's on his property, not from there to the sewage plant. Okay, there's a lift station that's going to be built on the banks of a major tributary to San Marcos River. This is near Highway 80 and Loop 110. Okay, this is called Snake Creek, and it floods after heavy rains. Now, this lift stations do have sewer leaks, and this will go into the river. Also, who is paying for the proposed fire stations? It's supposed to be 2 fire stations. And the fire chief did say that each one costs anywhere from $8 to $13 million to build and equip.
Ms. Harper?
Oh,
I'm sorry, your time is up.
I'm sorry, I've got more stuff.
You can email it to us. Ana Juarez? You can pick up from there next time.
My name is Ana Juarez, address 342 Newberry Trail. City Council, thank you for serving the San Marcos community, and thanks to the P&Z for giving the community some time to do research about expanding the SMART terminal. I want to ask 3 questions today. 1, why do we need to double the size of the original SMART terminal? And why didn't the original developer find any business clients? Did you know that the proposed 2,017 acres equal 80 outlet malls? Please help me understand why the original almost 900-acre HI Park is not big enough for this rural East Side area, and why manufacturing businesses did not clamor for the opportunity to locate here. If you believe San Marcos needs that much more HI zoning, please provide an evidence-based explanation of why that is the case. And please spread the need for heavy industrial zones throughout the community, rather than forcing small towns and rural, marginalized Hispanic neighborhoods to bear the brunt of industrialization. 2, why did the Cotton Center sell their acreage rather than develop their property? I have heard that they had problems acquiring essential infrastructure, including wastewater and fire protection. If these are rumors, please dispel them and explain what you know about this issue. 3, how and when will city staff estimate the costs versus the revenues of this project? I've heard 2 reasons for approving the project. 1 is to provide tax revenue. The second is to provide good jobs, especially jobs with benefits that will allow our Rattlers to live a middle-class lifestyle, buy a home, and raise their families here in town, even without a college degree. These are good reasons to pursue a development project, but first and foremost, the city has a fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers. We must not assume that economic developments automatically benefit us. Instead, please do the math. Do the tax revenues really exceed the long-term tax burden on taxpayers? I hope the city and council prioritize their fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers as you consider removing prime land for affordable housing, and instead double the amount of HI zoned land for the SMART terminal. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Annie Donovan.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Annie Donovan. I don't have much to say tonight other than I'm disappointed in how the SMART development has been handled. It's disappointing that a special interest nonprofit has a louder voice than the many, many community members and citizens who live in the area and will be affected by heavy industrial in their front yards. I invite all of you to please just take a short road trip to drive the distance and truly understand the gravity your decision will hold in the coming weeks. Not only is the future of my life and those of my neighbors in your hands, your legacies are on the line as well. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Claude Aurelius. I'm sorry, if you'll pronounce that better for me.
Yes, my name is Claude Aurelius. How you guys doing today? So I'm going to have a different subject matter than what everyone's talking about, so hope everybody can keep up with me. So I am the property manager at the Oasis Apartments in San Marcos, and we cater to Texas State students. So I'm here today because we have a 90-day moratorium that's been in effect for over 3 years now, and it's cash-strapping properties like mine, and landlords across the city are complaining about it. We have students who are not paying rent, who understands that they have 90 days not to pay rent, and they weaponize that against landlords. So we have units full of people who are just basically squatters. There's nothing we can do about it. Right now, we have people who are positioning themselves because they know our leases end in July when the school term ends to not pay rent for the last 3 months, and there's nothing we can do to them. We have residents who basically told me, Claude, there's nothing you can do about it. I have 90 days. I'm staying here for free. When my 90 days up, I'm gonna move out. I have a delinquency balance right now that's $80,000 in a apartment complex that only has 600 people. And out of that 80,000, 50 people haven't paid for at least 2 months. And then with the rules that we have now, I have to put a 3-day notice in. After I put the 3-day notice in, they don't pay after the 3 days, give them a 90-day notice and have to wait 90 days after that. And then we can go to court, and then I have to appeal, if they can appeal it if they want to as well. So we actually had a resident who appealed the 90 days, and with the due process of going to court, they stayed a total of 120 days for free. San Marcos and Texas State has a limited housing on campus, so we have plenty of people who come who say, hey, the university told me I can't live here, I want to move on your side. Well, there's nothing I can do about it because on paper I'm 100%, but in reality I'm not because I have 50 people who just refusing to pay rent. We've had situations where we go night marketing to just promote to Texas State students, and you run to night market, you see someone in the corner taking shots. Hey, this is Brad who hasn't paid rent for 2 months. So we're just at a point where, you know, COVID-19 has been here for 3 years now. Under the time when COVID started, it's very understandable on why this needed to be put in place, but a lot of time has passed. Social distancing has stopped, mask mandates have stopped, people are back to work, people are back to school, and we need to use tools to make sure our business can still be up and running. So that's why I'm here today. And I just hope you guys will consider that going forward in order to just, you know, make us have, you know, a business that's prosperous. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Olivia Fatal.
Hi, my name is Olivia Fatal, and that was a very entertaining citizen comment there, actually. I was all in that. It was 3 minutes. So, hello. I'm here again on the reforms. I have been attending the police department meetings, which are actually quite fascinating in a very dull way. So basically with the Hartman reforms, the police department said that you people didn't want to do the giving up the vacation for the suspension, the number 5 of the Hartman, and they seemed very willing to do so when they were speaking about this. They seemed very willing to do all of it that was in writing up until they don't want to change the definition of discipline. So I don't know what anybody has in mind, but I just want to talk about the dangers from a psychological and humanistic aspect of being on the job after you screw up. Someone might be dead, someone might be hurt, all those things, and immediately keep working and keep working through the whole thing. You never get a vacation that summer because you got it taken away. You work 365 days of the year, you know, the routine equivalent, so, you know, minus weekends. And you're working the whole time. Does that sound like it's going to make a cop sane, even a good cop sane? They never get a vacation because they got in trouble? I don't want a cop that's overworked on the streets trying to decide if they're gonna shoot me or not. It's very hard when you're overworked and tired to make the right decisions in your life. And I'm talking just like, you know, paint strokes. I can't even do paint strokes. Imagine me being responsible for a human life. I can't do that. What I thought were mandatory vacations. They have to use their vacation right then to take a vacation, to take a break, to settle in their head, to make a breather, maybe change their attitudes, maybe change, if it's traumatic, you know, get help, all of those things, because they need it. That is so hard, not getting a vacation. So anyway, that was my thought. Thank you.
And Joy Jungers?
Hello, my name is Joy Youngers. I'm a property owner in San Marcos and a resident of Martindale. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Last week, the San Marcos Planning and Zoning Board narrowly voted 5-4 to recommend a change from future development to heavy industrial zoning for an additional 580 acres in Caldwell County as part of the SMART terminal. Just one vote did it. But you will all have the opportunity to fix that and save the day on April 18th. This is what we know. Number one, the developer has stated that he is willing to come back to the table and renegotiate the development agreement if things don't go his way the first time around. Number two, the developer has already purchased all the land parcels and he wants to be annexed into the San Marcos city limits so he doesn't have to come up with all the infrastructure. Number three, the developer has stated he has no potential vendors, not even speculatively. He can't even promise local jobs because he doesn't know if the end users will rely on robotics or bring their own workers in, etc. If you have no potential vendors, then why would you even need one more acre of heavy industrial zoning? You wouldn't. I believe the developer asked for the extreme because any concession less than that would seem totally innocuous and would easily pass. Number four, 4 out of 5 of the new tracks will directly affect the San Marcos River tributaries. Track 3, that parcel closest to Martindale, also overlaps a portion of Martindale's wellhead protection area. A wellhead protection area is that land area regulated by the TCEQ, the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board, in cooperation with the EPA to prevent contamination of a well supplying a public water system. Number 5, San Marcos already has a bit of a train problem, don't you think? The SMART terminal will impact all residents of Maxwell, Reedville, and Martindale, and very few San Marcos residents. Our fate is in your hands. I'm asking you to minimize the negative impacts to the river, to traffic, to the environment, to our drinking water, and to the peaceful enjoyment of our homes by voting not to expand the heavy industrial zoning and to consider welcoming the SMART terminal into your city limits with reasonable modifications to their development agreement. Don't let a monstrosity on the east side of I-35 with graffitied rail cars stacked 80 feet high be the face of San Marcos. Instead, be known for the way you treated the environment and your neighbors. Thank you.
And my apologies, Anita Collins, I skipped over you earlier. My apologies, and sometimes I have to operate on the better late than never theory. Sorry.
Hi, my name's Anita Collins. I live in the Hopkins Historical District. I just wanted to come and speak on the gateway signage that we are going to be talking about later on today. And I wanted to say that I appreciate the work that's been done on the design, and it's beautiful, and it's a much-needed gateway sign that we need here in San Marcos. I especially like version D with this tree silhouette, and that's my favorite. With the beautiful, and it would be beautiful with the floating backlit letters that they suggested, and the layers of the water backlit as well. I appreciate the use of our limestone on the base and the reference to the river that has been noted as the most continuously inhabited area by indigenous people in the Americas. However, I question the established date that is on the markers. It is shown as 1881. According to historical records, San Marcos was first established in 1807 by Don Felipe Roque de la Portilla and Tejano settlers, which were of Spanish and Mexican descent. There, a square was laid out and lots were drawn along the San Marcos River on El Camino Real. Within a couple of years, the population grew to over 80 people. It is time that as a community, we recognize the original Mexican and Spanish settlers who sacrificed their homes, families, livelihoods to establish this beautiful city of ours in 1807. I've also provided a census taken in 1809 that documents our original residents. I am told that the date proposed on the markers is the date that modern San Marcos was founded. Perhaps that's because that's when the Anglos came in, most notably General Edward Burleson, who moved into the area and forcibly removed the indigenous people along with Jack C. Hayes and his trained Texas Rangers militia with Colt revolvers. Please consider including the historically accurate established date of 1807 on the gateway signage. Thank you.
Mr. Trevino, did we have any? I didn't miss anyone else. Okay, good. Then that concludes our citizen comment for the evening. Next are our presentations. Our first one will be a presentation from Deloitte & Touche LLP on the quarterly internal audit report and provide direction to staff. Ms. Reyes? Do you have any intro?
No.
Mr. Locke?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. One of the requirements associated with the Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery funding the city received in response to the 2015 flooding is to have an internal audit program. The city contracted with Deloitte to perform the internal audit services, and we have Kathy Swartfeger with us via Zoom to provide an overview of the fiscal year 22 fourth quarter audit.
Thank you, Mr. Locke, and good to be with you, Council. This quarter's review covers the period of July 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2022. As in prior quarters, this quarter focuses on evaluating the design and effectiveness of the internal controls over the Community Development Disaster Recovery Block Grant. It also looks for compliance with the federal program requirements of the particular projects that are in plan for the city. We also evaluate the city's ongoing compliance with its own rules and regulations that govern the program. And we look at compliance with the overall approved plan for the individual projects that were submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Each quarter, we look at all new procurements that were issued or conducted during the quarter. We look at any new contracts or any amendments that were made during the quarter. We also take a sample of 30% of all expenditures made in a quarter to evaluate for compliance and transparency and accountability of those costs. And we follow up on any prior audit findings from Deloitte or from the individual site visits that are conducting by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. In performing these procedures, we conduct interviews of key members of city staff, which includes finance and procurement professionals, as well as the actual programmatic professionals that are carrying out the grant. We collect various transaction data and supporting documents to ensure that all rules and regulations were followed and the transactions were booked in accordance with rules and regulations. And then we test those transactions for validity. Today, I will give you a brief overview of the follow-up work that we did with respect to the last HUD visit and the city's response, and then I'll turn it over to Carlos Diaz on our staff, who will talk about this quarter's review of the expenditures and overall compliance items. The last HUD visit that was conducted by HUD occurred in September of 2022, with the final report of the results of that visit coming out on December 15th of 2022. At that time, the city provided a response to the HUD report, including the city's corrective action that they would take on the areas noted for improvement, as well as areas the city did not believe that the HUD action review adequately addressed what the city was doing. The city has not yet received a response to the city's corrective action plan or its feedback with respect to some of the items not agreeing to the city's processes. And so for those items, we will wait to hear back from HUD, and we'll perform a follow-up of those comments back from HUD in the next quarter once received. With that, let me turn it over to Mr. Diaz to go through the results of this quarter's procedures. Carlos?
Hi, good evening, Mayor Houston, City Council members, city staff, and citizens, of course. I'd like to provide the results from this quarter's review. So first of all, I would like to congratulate the city. They've been doing a great job on the last few quarters. The documentation they provided was excellent. The processes, the items, and how they're showing they're managing the city's programs. Honestly, this has made my job easy. So one of the things we mentioned on previous reports, we've talked about more current drawdowns that has been addressed on this quarter. The city's doing an excellent job pulling those funds, and we're seeing a lot of progress towards that. On a review resulted in one minor detail to which we were discussing about what's an RFI and a formal solicitation. The city does not consider an RFI to be a formal solicitation. So Deloitte, in our professional opinion, we recommended the city to issue any denials letters to any unawarded respondent. The city respectfully disagreed with our recommendation, stating that the city's policy considers an RFI process to be exempt from competitive bidding and competitive proposal solicitations. Our recommendation comes from, HUD regulations does not technically make a distinction between an informal procurement or a formal competitive procurement process relative to a vendor's ability to protest the results of the procurement. And that's where our concern lies. So the recommendation is that the city incorporates an issuance of award and denial letters to the process of any informal procurements. Other than that, honestly, this is one detail that the city needs to revise, but this has been a really great report. They're doing a great job. John, if you have any additional comments you would like to discuss about this, we've been in talks with him. He's been really great with us. We can address them, of course, or any questions.
Council, questions, thoughts, concerns? I think this concludes this item then, Mr. Locke. And we thank those from Deloitte & Touche for joining us online today. We appreciate that. And we will move on to item 2. Mr. Vino.
Appreciate joining. Good
Thank you.
evening.
Thank y'all.
Receive the annual audit report and highlights from the city's audit firm, ABIP PC, on the City of San Marcos Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, ACFR, for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2022.
Mr. Locke.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. ABIP was selected to perform the audit of the city's fiscal year 22 financial statements. And Michael Del Toro is a partner with ABIP, and he is here this evening to provide an overview of the fiscal year 22 audit.
Thank you, John. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to discuss the audit. I will be brief, but again, I'm here for at your discretion. So please feel free to ask questions about the audit or the audit reporting. We did meet with the Audit and Finance Committee this past Thursday to go over this in some detail, and so we fielded questions from them and obviously presented a much more lengthy presentation of the report. In summary, the audit was conducted in accordance with standards generally accepted in the United States and government auditing standards because of the federal funding that you're receiving. And the purpose of the audit was to opine on whether the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In our audit report on page 1 of this document, we do find that the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That is an unmodified opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that we can give on the financial statements as they're presented. As part of the audit, because they were performed in accordance with government auditing standards, we are required to review and report on issues with internal controls. We conducted a risk assessment at the start of the audit to plan and perform the audit to determine whether procedures and controls are in place to properly state your financial information, whether you have the procedures to issue reports in accordance with standards. We find in that report, which is towards the tail end of this document, that the city has adequate controls. Through our risk assessment, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and so we are issuing a clean report on the internal control review. As mentioned at the very beginning, the city does receive quite a bit of federal awards, and so we did conduct a single audit. This year's program was the ARPA funds. Those were new to the city this year, and so that was a major program that had to be audited in accordance with the OMB compliance supplement. Through that audit, which consists of about 14 different compliance requirements to test, we did not find any material weaknesses or deficiencies as it relates to the ARPA grant funding. And so, again, a clean opinion on the single audit. And with that, I will conclude and take questions from council.
Council, are there any questions?
Thank you for the audit.
Yes.
Thank
When
you.
you get a nice, clean audit, there's just not a whole lot of questions
Yeah.
to ask.
And it's not our work, obviously, it's city staff that has done the work that has resulted in this opinion, so.
And one thing, Mayor, if I could just chime in, is that it was important that we point out the fact that there has been some transition, in finance, quite a bit of staff turnover and change. And one of the things that the auditors did point out to the Finance and Audit Committee is that they really took a hard look at the controls and processes and things that have been in place, even during that transition. And despite the transition, we still received a clean audit. So I want to commend the staff. Ismael Garcia, who's been here as now he's assistant director, and his team, and Mr. Locke also for his oversight since he's come in. But just wanted to make sure that was clear to council as a whole and to the community that that is something that we asked for more eyes on, just to make sure things were clean.
All right, and I was just getting ready to thank the staff who keep the books all year. That gives us a clean audit when the auditors come in. So, Mr. Locke, thank you to you and those in all departments, because I know all departments, they've got things to pay and things to do, so that makes sure that things are good elsewhere.
Yes, ma'am.
So, thanks to all staff who participated and contributed to such a good result. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Del Toro, for being here. And on to item 3.
Receive a staff presentation of the quarter ended December 31, 2022 financial report and provide direction to the city manager.
Mr. Locke.
Thank you again, Mayor and City Council. This will provide an overview of the financial activity through the first quarter of fiscal year 22. And it'll be our major operating funds. We'll begin with the general fund, discuss our enterprise funds, and end with our hotel tax fund. The first fund is our general fund. And just an introduction to the slide. The green is revenue and the blue expense. The solid color is the actual activity during the period, and the what looks to the lighter color is the budget for the revenue or expense. So beginning to look at the 2023 activity, we have collected just under 30% of total revenues in the general fund. At $28.8 million of the $96.7 million budget. As you can see, if you compare it to fiscal year 22, you can see it numerically on the right-hand side of the slide, that's really close to where we were from a percent perspective at the same time period last year. Looking at the expenses, we have spent just under 22% of our budget. We spent $23.7 million of our $108 million budget. One thing that I did want to point out is we have budgeted expenses in excess of revenues, and those are one-time expenses for capital projects. They're not recurring expenses. Next slide, please. For the general fund, we have a couple additional slides to provide some additional detail. The first is some more detail on general fund revenues. You can see on the slide it has the 2023 budget as well as the 2023 actual through the first quarter, and you can compare those same revenue categories to the activity in 2022. The two largest revenue sources in the general fund are sales tax and property tax. Sales tax makes up 40% of our 2023 budget, and property tax makes up about 30%. So our sales tax collections have been strong this year. We've collected 26% of what was budgeted. We've collected $10.1 million, and we expected to collect $9.3 million. So we're about $780,000 ahead of where we thought we would be at this point in the year. Our property tax collections, this is through December. We receive a lot of our property tax collections in the month of January. And I know as of February, we had collected 97% of the levy. We typically collect 98%, so we're on target to collect what we typically receive. You can see that the total revenue collections, again, tied back to the prior slide of $28.7 million. Next slide, please. Moving on to the general fund expenditures. The largest expenditure category in the general fund is personnel. The types of services that the city provides, it takes people to provide those services, so personnel makes up the largest expenditure in the general fund. You can see that we have spent about 23% of our budget, which is higher than where we were at this point last year. Part of that is due to the one-time retention incentive that City Council approved for fiscal year 23. And with the increases that City Council also approved, we've seen a decrease in the turnover rate. So we're starting to see some benefit from investing in the employees. Next slide, please. Moving on to our electric utility. We have the total revenue budget is $65.1 million. We collected 22% of that, or $14.7 million. And if you look at where we were at this point in the year, that's close to where we were at this point. In general, you would expect to be around 25% of the way through the budget, and the electric utility and even the water wastewater utility. We see higher collections during the summer months. The summer months for the electric utility is when people tend to run their air conditioning units more, and so we get a larger collection of revenues in the summer months. Looking at the expenses, we have spent 22% of the budget at $14.7 million of our $66.8 million budget, which is close to where we were at the same point last year. The next enterprise fund that we will discuss is the water wastewater utility. We have spent $13.9 million of the $57.8 million budget, which is about 10%. If you compare that to where we were last year we were at 14.8% of the budget. The reason for that difference is the timing of a debt service payment that was made. There's a debt service payment of $1.3 million that fell in the first quarter of fiscal year 22, and it fell in the second quarter in fiscal year 23. And I may have moved right over revenues on the water wastewater. We have collected 24%, which is slightly ahead of where we were last year at this point. Our stormwater management fund, we have collected just under 25% of our budgeted revenues. Stormwater revenues tend to be more regular, and so we collect about 25% of those every quarter. On the expense side, we have spent 9%, which is up slightly from where we were last year. A lot of the projects, a lot of the expenditure in the stormwater fund are related to capital projects, whether that be debt service or actually conducting the construction of a project, and that tends to happen in the spring and summer months, not necessarily in the winter months. The next fund is our resource recovery fund. We have collected about 24% of our revenue in resource recovery, 1.7 million of our 7.1 million, which is close to where we were at this point last year. On the expense side, we have spent 21% of our budget at 1.5 million, and that is ahead of where we were last year. And the reason for that is the timing of a payment to the vendor that provides the collection services. There was a payment that fell on that last day of December, actually, instead of the first day in January. And the last enterprise fund that we will discuss is the airport fund. We have collected 16% of our revenues, 124,000 of the 767,000 budget. That is down slightly from where we were at the same point last year. On the expense side, we have spent just under 27% of our expense budget at $205,000, which is up about 5% from the same point last year. Looking into the reason for the increase in the expenses, the airport management contract payment for the month of January was also received in December, similar to what happened with the resource recovery fund. And the last fund that we will discuss is the hotel tax fund. We have collected 26% of our revenue budget. The hotel tax revenues continue to be strong. We collected 1.1 million of the 4.4 million budget, which is, from a percent perspective, less than where we were last year, and actual collections is more. The reason that it is less is the revenue budget has increased 23%, as we have seen the hotel tax revenue rebound following the COVID-19 pandemic. On the expense side, we have spent $900,000 of the $4.9 million budget, which is about 18%, which is close to where we were at this same point last year. And that concludes the financial review. I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Council, questions?
All in all, it looks like a good quarterly. Sorry, Mayor. All in all, it looks like a good quarterly report. You know, we're bringing in more money than we're spending. Sales taxes are strong, hotel taxes are strong. I have a question. If, you know, because these are given to us quarterly, you know, what would happen if something were dramatically changed in a short time? Would we have like a revised quarterly meeting, like, hey, the outlet mall burned down and we didn't get any sales tax this month? You know, like, would we get a report mid-quarter if something dramatic were to change?
Yeah, I would imagine it would be a lot like the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic when that hit. I wasn't here at the time, but I know at the city that I was at that we brought the impact that we were measuring to city council to keep them apprised of what was going on with city operations.
Well, the reason I bring it up, and this will go into your next presentation about our investments, you know, what we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, you know, that, you know, and luckily the federal government backstopped all those depositors and stuff, but if we were to have a scenario like that, you know, where things were to change so quickly, you know, like, I just want to know, like, how, you know, governments are always not known for quickly moving on things, and I just want to know, like, if we were to have situations like that, like, how quickly could we adapt?
We would definitely, if in the event that something like that was going to happen, we would certainly get that in front of city council. I would say at the next regularly scheduled meeting to make sure the council was apprised of what's going on and what plan staff would have in addressing, you know, the issue. We would react very quickly to something like that.
We would definitely react very, very quickly. Some of the things we would do administratively, and we did during COVID-19. The financial policy says that, you know, we would look at things to come in, and if we see a quarter of our revenues going down, then we would do these things. Well, when COVID-19 hit, it didn't take us to wait 3 months to see that, hey, there's not a lot of people, everything's shut down. People can't come to the outlet malls and things like that. So we administratively took that on in terms of saying to our directors, okay, no more travel, you know, no more like kind of discretionary spending. We even took in like their operating line items that weren't for necessary things and brought that up under one line item, and they had to basically ask for it in order to get that. So the directors, I want to thank all the ones who were here during that time because it was really tough, and the staff, you know, who weren't able to do some things that they wanted to do, but we had to try to be proactive because we didn't know what we didn't know. And so those things happened administratively. We did a memo then to inform the city council so that y'all were aware of the things that were happening and what we were doing proactively. And then anything that would take council, you know, action, then we would make sure and schedule that. So if it means scheduling an emergency meeting because something happens right away, we would do that. But this time we didn't need to do it because we were able to do a lot of things administratively and just keep you informed of what was going on and bring those things forward as necessary.
Thank you.
Don't need our approval to not spend money.
Exactly.
Unless we owe it, in which case we're going to pay the bill.
But if we needed to get money, from example, you know, you hear about us with our fund balance in the savings account, you know, and that's what it's there for, so that if we did need that for operating expenses, that we would need to come back to council. We couldn't spend because you hadn't allocated that amount for us to spend in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, they did move deliberately, quickly, and I think we did very well because staff pulled together, and again, maybe not everybody was happy about some of the things that we had to do, but we did what we had to do.
Well, one of the things historically that's helped cities, and especially in the state of Texas, that rely so much on sales tax revenues is you get those numbers every month. The places that rely directly all on property taxes, you don't know exactly what those are going to look like, and it's a much more difficult situation. So we're very fortunate that we get those month-to-month numbers that about half of our budgetary income.
Well, and COVID hit after property tax was due, and so that was mostly paid, so anyway. Other questions, concerns, thoughts, questions? Okay, I think that concludes this one. Mr. Vino, would you read item 4?
Yes, ma'am. Receive a staff presentation of the quarter ended December 31, 2022 investment report and provide direction to the city manager.
Mr. Locke?
This is the final presentation from finance today, and this will provide an overview of the investment results through the first quarter of fiscal year 2022. We'll begin with just an overview of the economy. Council may have heard that in March, the Federal Open Market Committee increased the interest rates another 0.25% to a target range of 4.75 to 5%. This has a positive impact on the types of investments that the city is able to invest in. A lot of the types of investment we invest in are federal securities. And when the feds increase the rate, it drives those rates up, so the city receives more interest revenue. The committee is trying to is raising rates to try and get the inflation down to about a 2% range. Inflation in February, the consumer price index was 6%, and if you back out the food and energy, it was 5.5%. So we're still ways from the 2%, and it's definitely trending in a downward direction. At one point, it was 8%, so we're seeing some positive movement towards getting closer to the 2%. Looking at unemployment for the month of February, the city of San Marcos unemployment unadjusted was 4.3%, which was lower than Texas and higher than the nationwide average. This rate is higher than the rate that we discussed during the budget policy, and that's mostly attributable since it's unadjusted. The last rate we saw was through the December time period and all the additional holiday hires that go on during that time period. So you would expect to see that with the holidays being over, it moves slightly. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of all the investments that the city has in its portfolio. You can see on the left-hand slide under the December 2022 column where we finished the quarter and with the amount of value of each type of investment. So in pools and our money market accounts, there was $191 million, in securities, $131 million, and demand accounts, which are the city's financial accounts that we use to process payroll and to pay bills, there was $11 million. So in total, we finished with $334 million. And if you look back to the September quarter, we finished with $336 million, so it was down slightly. I'd like to bring your attention to the second row, where it talks about the quarter current average yield. Our total portfolio was 2.4%, which is up from the rolling 12-month average of 1.4%. We've really seen an increase in our interest earnings. The very last row there, you see the first quarter earnings were $2.5 million. If you, just going back one quarter to the end of fiscal year 22, it was $1.3 million. And if you go back an entire year, at this point last year, it was $74,000. So that shows you how much the increase in the interest rate, the impact that it's had on our interest earnings. Next slide, please. This slide shows the total amount of investment by fund type. The city tracks its fund investments by enterprise funds and by consolidated funds. So the solid colors are where we ended as of December 31st, and the lighter colors is where we were as of September 30th. So looking first at our consolidated funds, which is mostly the general fund money, we finished with $117.6 million. The blue color is what we had in regular cash, and the green are the reserves. That's the money that we have set aside as our reserves. So we finished with $26 million in reserves. Moving over to the enterprise, we finished with $216 million, and 198 of that was in regular cash, and $18 million of it was in reserves. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides just show of that total amount, how much is allocated to each fund within that type. So this one shows for the consolidated cash, the 117 million from the previous slide. It breaks that out across the different fund types.
Go away.
The governmental CIP fund has the most of $50 million, and the general fund reserves and the general fund make up the majority of the remainder, each having around $22 million. Next slide, please. This next slide shows the breakdown of our enterprise portfolio. By far, the majority of the funds are in the capital improvement program funds, and you can see over 80% of it, out of the total $216 million, there is, the majority of it is in our capital improvement project funds. Next slide, please. This slide shows the different types of securities that the city has invested its funds in. The middle column says what is allowable by the investment policy that City Council has approved. And on the far right-hand side, it shows where we were as of fiscal year 23 at the end of the first quarter and where we were at the end of fiscal year 22 at the end of the fourth quarter. So, for instance, in local government funds, we're allowed to have up to 100% of our portfolio invested in local government investment pools, and we had 53%, which is down from the prior quarter. The biggest movement you see is in the investment in the federal agency securities. Again, that is as investments mature, we're investing in those federal agencies where we're getting the higher interest rates. And the final slide just shows all the different fund types the city has and the yield that we are receiving on those funds. It also has the one-year Treasury bill and the 6-month Treasury bill. The pink and green lines are the one-year Treasury bill and the 6-month Treasury bill, and you can see that they are the highest of the group. Whenever the Federal Reserve adjusts rates, those move immediately. And the city's investments will trail behind that. You know, the same you'll see the reverse of that if the Feds reduce rate, because those rates will go down, and we're invested at a longer term maturity, so our investment rate will hang up at a higher rate for a longer period of time. The city's regular cash are the next two lines that you see together, and the bottom two lines are the reserves. The reserves are able to be invested for a longer period of time, so we haven't had an opportunity to invest as many of those into the higher investments yet until they have matured. And that completes the investment report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, council?
I have a question, Mayor.
Mr. Gonzalez.
With all this great news, did our credit rating improve?
We haven't had a rating since this. I think the last rating we had was probably when we issued our COs back in the middle of the year. So since we've had this information, we haven't had a credit rating.
But it's going in that direction.
This is definitely a plus in that direction. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is it a credit rating, or are we talking about our bond rating?
Bond rating.
Bond rating.
My correction.
Yeah, I assumed that's what you was talking.
But that brings up a question. Do we have a credit rating?
It is our bond rating.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Good question. All right, so with that, I thank you and everyone who participated in putting that report together. We thank you very much. And we are on to our consent agenda. The following ordinances, resolutions, et cetera, numbered 5 through 13, may be acted upon by one motion unless council pulls something to discuss it. Is there anything anyone wants to pull?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Which one?
It is, what number is it? It is the one regarding the opioid settlement.
I think that's the last one. It's 13.
Item 13.
All right. So Garza is pulling item 13. Anything else?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve items 12 through 5.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion by Mr. Prather.
I'll second it.
To do 5 through 12. Mr. Gleason will second, and we will vote.
Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Gleason?
Aye.
Mayor Houston?
Aye.
Ms. Garza?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza?
Aye.
Mr. Prather?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so we will put item 13 aside, and we will move on to our public hearing. We will come back to item 13 after our public hearing, which is our usual process. Yes, ma'am.
Receive a staff presentation, hold a public hearing to receive comments for or against ordinance 2023-31 on the first of two readings, amending the official zoning map of the city in KCZ-22-41 by rezoning approximately 42.51 acres out of the Juan M. Veramendi Survey, abstract number 17, Hays County, Texas, generally located at the northwest corner of the East McCarty Lane and Leah Avenue intersection from GC General Commercial District to LI Light Industrial District, or subject to consent of the owner, another less intense zoning district classification, including procedural provisions, and provide an effective date, and consider approval of ordinance 2023-31 on the first of two readings.
Ms. Hernandez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amanda Hernandez, Director of Planning and Development Services. The City Council may recall hearing this rezoning in December, where we held a public hearing. Since more than 90 days has passed since that public hearing, we do have to, per code, hold another public hearing. So that is one of the reasons that we are here today. But we're also here because the City Council postponed the item to go to a joint committee with Planning Commission. So I'm going to give a quick overview of what you already heard in December, and then also an overview of what happened with that joint committee. So you may recall this 43 acres is near the intersection of I-35 and McCarty Lane. Next slide. The property is currently vacant. Nearby uses include the Embassy Suites Hotel, Convention Center, and the Amazon Distribution Warehouse. Next slide. The property is currently zoned general commercial, and the applicant is requesting light industrial zoning. Next slide. On the preferred scenario map, the property is located in an employment center. Next slide. And our Development Code 4.1 says that special districts, of which light industrial is, that they should be considered in employment centers. Next slide. We know that light industrial is known for its bad neighbor uses. However, the applicant has agreed to restrictive covenants and actually had them available in December when we heard this item. And that would prohibit a lot of the uses that we consider those bad neighbor uses. I have a couple more slides on the zoning, and then we'll get into those restrictive covenants. If we can go to the next slide, please. Property is not located within an environmentally sensitive area. Next slide. The city will be the utility service provider, and additional roadways will be required through the development to provide additional connectivity in the area. Next slide. The item came forward with a neutral recommendation from staff and a denial recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, so a supermajority will be required to overturn the commission's decision. Next slide. As I mentioned, in December, City Council appointed 2 members to a joint committee to discuss this item, and subsequently the Planning and Zoning Commission appointed 3 members. And the purpose was to attempt to find a compromise for the development which could be included in the restrictive covenants. And that committee met twice to discuss this project. Next slide. This slide has a brief summary of the committee's discussion. Recall the applicant did submit those self-imposed restrictive covenants with the original request. Prohibited uses and architectural design review were included in the initial document for restrictive covenants. And the applicant has, since we had conversations with the committee, updated their site plan in order to orient loading docks and internal driveways away from the Embassy Suites and Convention Center. And they've also relocated their drainage pond in order to, again, kind of relocate those buildings farther away from that hotel. One topic that the applicant did not agree to, which the committee discussed a couple of times, was a restriction on the hours of operation of the businesses and restriction on truck traffic in the area. If we can go to the next slide. Wanted to show you the layout that you saw in December. You may recall this with the 3 larger buildings along Leah Avenue and the detention pond, which on this photo is in the bottom right-hand corner. When you tilt that up to be oriented towards north, it's actually in the northeast corner of the property. If you go to the next slide, please. You'll see that that detention pond has now been moved. pushing the buildings farther away from the Embassy Suites. Some of the buildings have gotten smaller, but in general, this is what the applicant is willing to agree to as far as a site layout, coming to that compromise with the joint committee. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Then I will open the public hearing and ask if anyone in chambers wishes to speak for, against, or about. If you would approach the podium, we will need your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Copeland Ray. My address is 7810 Meadowcroft, Houston, Texas, 77063. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I know we've discussed this potential rezoning for several months, and I appreciate everyone's collective time spent on this effort. I'd like to address a few items that I think are important for the council to consider while voting. 1, tax revenue. We are hoping to make an investment in San Marcos of approximately $63 million, not including the retail that fronts I-35 in McCarty. Needless to say, this generates a large tax base for the city of San Marcos and its citizens. Case in point, what we were talking about, what y'all were talking about earlier. Job creation, number 2. The comprehensive development plan for San Marcos shows that the site is located in an employment center. Our proposed development will provide locations where employment opportunities exist. Types of jobs that we will support are great paying jobs that will benefit the citizens of San Marcos. Our list of clients include companies within the following sectors, to name a few: automotive supply, light assembly, distribution, manufacturing, and life sciences. Land uses, number 3. No large grocery store chain will consider this property because of the new H-E-B, which is across the street. So retail development on this tract of this size is highly unlikely, hence why the retail developer is selling us a portion of the land. Office development is not viable because there's no market demand for it. The land is surrounded by similar uses, making it a great location for light industrial. 4, committee recommendations. We feel like we've appropriately addressed all concerns of the committee except for one over the last few months. We have provided the following: increased landscape requirements, increased landscape maintenance requirements, limited use table for light industrial zoning, limited the building size and location within the park as to not to disturb the patrons of the Embassy Suites, and placing restrictive covenants on the park. The one issue we cannot agree to is limiting truck traffic between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. We intend to construct these buildings on a speculative basis, a true partnership with the city. As such, we cannot limit our ability to market to companies that only have shipping and receiving needs between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. We provide real estate solutions to over 100 companies, many of which are Fortune 500 companies and will not accept limitations on their shipping and receiving hours. 5, Embassy Suites and Convention Center. We believe that our industrial development will help increase revenue for the Embassy Suites and convention centers. Executive managers, trainers, etc. will travel from other states and will need a place to stay, and Embassy Suites will be an ideal location for them. We also believe that this type of tenant that we will attract will likely want to use the convention center for industry meetings, conventions, etc. There are other 24/7 operations at industrial buildings which are just as visible from the Embassy Suites as our park. I-35 is adjacent to the hotel and has trucks and traffic on it all hours of the day and night, which will be far louder than any truck traffic within our park. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the room wishing to speak? We'll need your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Rayhan Rajab, and I reside in 18118 Shimmer Lane in Richmond, Texas, 77407. I represent the owners of the subject property. First and foremost, I want to thank the city council members and the planning zoning team for the opportunity of speaking for you in front of you this evening. The planning and zoning team has been working with us and with the applicant for the past several months, and from the last hearing, the council members have extended support and interest in creating a special committee where we can somehow find a way to bridge a gap and see how we can make this development come to life. So I want to thank you for that consideration. From my understanding in the conversation the applicant and the special committee has had, I feel in that sense that they've been successful and able to bridge the gap and potentially create some life for this project. However, there has been a hurdle, there has been a concern about where they couldn't come to an agreement, which was limiting the truck traffic from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. As a business owner, I'd like to say that, creating a limitation for this with the limiting truck hours does create a challenge for the tenants by creating inefficiencies for the business process and meeting deadlines. The late night drop-off and pickup helps the drivers reach where they need to go and be able to drive on the roads and highways when there's not much traffic, creating a little bit safe for them. One thing I kind of thought of is, imagine you're going to H-E-B and going shopping early in the morning. As you're going the first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock, imagine you're going grabbing bread, eggs, or milk, and you see the crew, the stocking crew, running behind you, running in front of you with their cart through their back office, or back room, with all the supplies and inventory coming in front of you, trying to, shelf the inventory with all the stock. That creates a lot of inefficiencies for them. The normal practice we've seen is the late night crew coming in when the hours of operations are pretty much closed, when no consumers are there. The stock crew goes in, without any hesitation, without any risk, I would say, and efficiently go in the back room, stock what they need, completely fill the shelves with inventory, have the place nice and clean, so 8 o'clock in the morning, consumers like yourself and myself are able to go into the stores, purchase bread, purchase groceries, purchase what we need, so we can quickly get what we need, either go home, drop off the groceries, go to school, drop off some lunch for our kids, or whatever that may be. I personally feel that this limitation, this issue could be bridged, and I feel strongly that this will really support, I guess, the development for the area. But thank you, and thank you for your time, and appreciate you hearing us out. Thanks.
Okay. Is there anyone else in chambers wishing to speak? And Ms. Trevino, I believe Ms. Capoletta had signed up for this one?
Yes,
All
she
right.
is on.
Hey, y'all. Good evening. My name is, there's my dehydrator, y'all. I got the smell of peppers and onions in my house right now. Good evening. My name is Professor Lisa Marie Capoletta. I live at 1322 Belvin. They call me LMC. Behind me, the citizens of San Marcos can see the sheer proximity of this proposed business next to something that many of us voted for. Now, I didn't vote for it, but there was a lot of discussion in the community for the Embassy Suites Hotel. And in the packet on November 7th, Embassy Suites smartly states, we are writing in opposition to the proposed change from GU to LI from the proposed warehouse distribution use. As a hotel and convention center, it is fundamental that we provide quality, overnight, sleeping accommodations to transient guests. A light industrial zoning, and particularly a warehouse distribution center, will bring heavy truck activity, including the grinding of gears and the backup warning beepers that will disturb our guests and be inconsistent with our existing use. And I think that for those of the individuals in our community who made this investment in Embassy Suites to be an ambassador of our community, you owe it to the taxpayers to deny this. The Planning and Zoning Committee wisely denied it, and you guys also, I find it really interesting how arrogant these developers are, trying to tell us what we need as far as a tax base. And then the arrogance gets even better on item number 4, where they say, this is a deal killer. As you know, we intend to construct these buildings on a speculative basis, right? It's not normative. We don't know what they're gonna do. As such, we cannot limit our ability to market to companies that have only shipping and receiving needs between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Like, we're going to tell you what we're going to do in your wonderful convention center that the taxpayers paid for. Any industrial operation, even if they do not have as a 24/7 operation, needs the ability to have trucks to deliver goods 24 hours a day. I just find that absolutely hilarious how arrogant they are. And then at the bottom of the document, they say, the property can remain undeveloped and not generate any tax revenue, like they're telling you your job, or it can be developed into a Class A and industrial park, right, which lots of beeps and grinding of gears, tax revenue and jobs for the people of San Marcos. Let me know if you have any questions. Well, you know, we paid for this through a bond. We didn't pay for a manufacturing noise factory for our guests in this community. And you know, even though I voted against the bond, I send a lot of people to the activity center, and I've been there for training myself, and I just think it would be a very poor optics for the city. It's basically like, look, we're the armpit of the manufacturing sector all across Central Texas, especially if you guys decide to vote for the diabolical proposition of the SMART terminal. We're going to come across as the armpit of Central Texas, that our elected officials are selling us out for jobs. Thank you for your time, and God bless San Marcos.
And that concludes our public hearing. Council, I await a motion. Mr. Scott, you'll need to turn on your microphone for that.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Mr. Scott. I'm looking to see if there is a second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Prather will second it, and now is our discussion time. Looking to see what
I'd like to know what
concerns
what y'all
are.
came up with, Mayor.
Huh?
As far as the committee, did y'all come to consensus and beat it all out like they? That was their purpose.
Well, the report was in the packet.
Yeah, I know, but reports say one thing.
Yeah.
So not everybody may agree.
So the hours?
Here's a summary.
I know those hours were brought up out of concern because of our investment for, we have the guests that are there, you
Yeah.
know, staying in the night, and that was something that,
Yeah. I'm concerned about the large buildings being next to the conference center. I think Leah is a good separator. Of course, Amazon's right
I was going
across
to
the
say,
street.
Amazon is just, they come down.
But it's
Lacardia.
across the street. It's across Leah. And I actually, when I was coming by, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I stopped at the Embassy Suites and asked if I could go to the top floor and just look and to see what guests would see. And I went, oh, yeah, that's not good. The truck traffic and the noise is of concern. I know that the conference center is on 35. The parking lot is between them and 35. I'm not sure that the people in the rooms hear a lot of that traffic. So I'm concerned, and we wanted more low impact, I guess you might say, uses, and I appreciate the developer, let me get my map out, making changes, because they did. They made a change. One was major, which Ms. Hernandez noted, is to move the detention pond from the opposite corner of the embassy. And I keep saying embassy, and I should say our conference center that we still owe money on, to move the detention pond next to the conference center. But there's still large truck traffic. Now, I want to make sure everyone realizes that what you see on 35, which is at the top of this map, that, and Ms. Hernandez, you correct me if I'm wrong, all of this is general commercial now, and they're not proposing to change that. So that leaves general commercial along 35. It also leaves general commercial along McCarty. It's the 6 larger buildings that are the topic. Well, no, it's the land use underneath those buildings. And of course, as y'all know, we're talking about land use, not this particular map. So I just wanted to lay all that information out. And I also appreciate the developers providing us the rules that they have for their business parks, which is, and maybe I shouldn't call it a business park, they're light industrial areas. And that solves a lot of my concerns as far as the light industrial. I just still have reservations about the light industrial right next to our conference center. So,
That was my concern, is this is our investment. And just take away us being council members. If you invest in something on your personal time, you want to ensure that that investment works out for you. And the taxpayers did vote for this, and I think that it's very important that we try to preserve our investment.
Ms. Reyes, was a conference center something that citizens voted on?
They did not vote
I'm
on the
sorry.
project itself, but they voted on the venue tax that was then created to help fund
Afterwards.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what Ms. Capeletta was talking about earlier was the activity center, because she
Oh, my
said she voted
confusion.
against
Okay.
it, and she uses the activity center. I think that was the bond she was referring to. What concerns me the most are the two buildings that are at the bottom, the two smaller ones. And I'm still, the ones on Leah. No, if you look at the Embassy Suites and you come straight down, those two. Those are the ones that concern me the most. So I've been in a quandary, and we had our last committee meeting, and we just said it's time to take this to council. We don't want to hold them up any longer. We just need to bring it to council and have a decision made. And Ms. Hernandez, I believe you did say this is going to take, you said supermajority. I believe that translates into 6. It will take 6 votes to pass this.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you consider UPS trucks as big trucks or small trucks? Can they deliver? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, right now, there's no proposed restrictions on the trucks.
Well, the time, I guess.
That was the time.
Yeah, the time.
I don't, Ms. Hernandez, if you have an answer, if the developers have an answer?
I'll say I don't have anything
know.
to add, but there's no agreement to limit trucks right now.
Yeah.
So if it's
Okay.
approved as is, then the trucks would be allowed 24 hours,
Yeah.
no matter the size
Gotcha.
or destination.
I guess I misunderstood about the time and trucks.
That was a request
Right.
that they felt they could not meet.
Right.
Yeah, I think the little UPS trucks in the, that are in the neighborhoods, but I know that when I worked for a company that built computers, they loaded a UPS truck, and it was much bigger than what comes around the neighborhood. But regardless, they have not agreed. And they made their case as to why they can't do that in 2 ways. One is if you've got restrictions and other people who are renting space don't, that's can be an issue. But I can see the logic in why having the trucks at night works, depending on what's in there. So I get that. I get that.
That does actually also help with, I was on the fence of that, but you explaining that in.
Yeah. I still don't like the trucks there, but I understand why they.
Exactly. I
Why
understand
they don't want to prohibit them during that time. Need to hear from others if you have a thought. Mr. Gleason, I think I see the wheels turning there.
Well, I've struggled with this one from the beginning, and I appreciate you guys trying to hash some stuff out. The truck traffic thing, I'm not as concerned about. There's an Amazon next door. I mean, I know why they were trying to do that, to keep the noise down at night, being directly next door, but between the truck traffic going down I-35 and coming from Amazon, I think what they're looking at is probably going to be negligible. My concern is the view itself and then the structures themselves. And I've gone back and forth on this one. I appreciate keeping the commercial on both the access road and on McCarty. I think that was good. And we kind of discussed it previously with other case kind of Cottonwood Creek that, having general commercial that far back, I'm sure it's not as valuable or as useful as there is a demand for spec buildings right now. And I don't know how I'm going to vote on this one yet. So.
It's tough. And I'm glad you said that, because they also moved a internal road to make things better, which was good.
And I appreciated the retention pond being moved, because I do think that does
it's
provide
helpful.
some,
Yeah. But I will disagree with you about the trucks on 35, and the trucks at Amazon are much, much further away. And it's the backing up and the gears and.
The backing up part is a little bit illegitimate, but believe me, going down the interstate at 70 mile an hour and The truck is much louder than it is pulling in and out. And so I mean, I get what you were trying to do is find a compromise there.
But you've
so-
got a whole, look how much parking lot you've got
I
too.
know.
There's a lot more space.
There is a lot more space there, so, I worry about the ramifications to the convention center. I mean, that's,
That's what I'm worried about. That's our investment.
I know.
Let's vote.
Now, the only other question I had too was for Ms. Hernandez. The original vote from P and Z was approval for heavy commercial?
But they
Yes, sir.
didn't discuss the conference center.
No, I know they didn't. And then when they came back and went to LI, it's a heavier use, so that's why they had to go back? Is that correct? I just kind of want to clarify.
It was
for
a
the
new
public, too.
application.
It was an all-new application?
Yes, it was a whole new application for light industrial, and the heavy commercial had come to y'all, and you had started the discussion about the convention center. So that's how staff got to the neutral recommendation, because it meets the comp plan in that it's in an employment center, but council expressed concerns. So we went with a neutral recommendation, and then Planning Commission, after having heard your discussion, held a similar discussion about light industrial.
I don't know that my concerns would be any different if it were heavy commercial. There's more, there's a few more things that you can do in light industrial, but you can't have the major vehicle repair. But it does include bottling, brewer, winery, contractor storage, lawn, tree, or garden service. They both allow for light manufacturing, so.
I'm sorry, Mayor, did you have something to say, sir? Sorry, it seems-
Would you like to ask him a question, which is why he can come to the podium and talk?
Let me come up with a question first, I guess. I just don't want to leave it open for,
Can the question be like, do you have anything else to add?
I was going to say, is there something you would like to add?
Yes.
You will need to come to the podium.
Been there.
She's experienced.
Thank you. Do I need to state my name again?
Please.
Copeland Ray, 7810 Meadowcroft, Houston, Texas, 77063. Would you mind going back to the slide with the?
I wouldn't mind at all, except I have no control over
I thought you did. I thought you were back there making it work.
Are you looking, is that what you're looking for?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'd like to point out that the flow of trucks will go down the feeder road to the north and come down that spine road on the north side of the property, and then internally on the opposite side of the detention pond from the Embassy Suites. In regards to the two smaller buildings that have come up in conversation, the intent there would be to wall off where the truck courts are shown. So you limit the amount of truck traffic that you would see from the Embassy Suites. Also, in regards to location relative to the I-35 and then the buildings, we've tried to push the buildings obviously as far away as possible from the Embassy Suites so that we limit that traffic and that sound as much as possible. But the amount of trucks that are going to access these size facilities are nowhere in comparison to the trucks that already go down McCarty to Amazon, being at 865,000 square foot building. So you typically have a smaller user, therefore you have smaller traffic, generally speaking.
Mr. Gonzalez, were you going to say something a minute ago?
No, but I could.
Sure.
The reason that I'm not in favor of it also is we got to protect our investment. And when those trucks back up, you always hear this beep, 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 beep. I can't tolerate that sometimes. But I just don't think it'd be a good idea for that location. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
If I can bring up a little story. So the last TML meeting, I had a conference that I was attending to in San Antonio last month, and I was at the, was it the Rio de Palacio?
Palacio del Rio.
Palacio del Rio, right on the Riverwalk. And the room I was staying in was on the 21st floor, and it was I was facing the opposite direction of the river. I was facing the Tower of America. And the city of San Antonio is building an extension of the Riverwalk there. So at 4:30 in the morning, I was hearing trucks, and I'm on the 21st floor. And I was hearing backups, I was hearing construction workers, I was hearing working happen. And at 7 o'clock, because their ordinance allows it to happen, I was hearing digging, and I was hearing just everything happening. And that was on the 21st floor of a decently renovated building. Now, granted, it was about the same distance between the Embassy Suites we have here and your first building, the 8,200 square foot one. So I just wanted to point that out to, but then again, that was also just during construction. So, of course, any project's going to get a lot of noise during that time frame.
But it was trucks.
But they were trucks, yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Mr. Trevino, we're going to vote, and then we're going to take a break.
Okay, Mr. Gleason.
Appreciate being first.
Your turn.
Yeah, I know.
You said aye?
And the motion is to.
He said, "I don't know."
Oh.
No, and I said in the motion.
I can
the
go
motion
first
is
if you
to
want.
approve.
Yes, the motion
So-
is to approve.
I'm a no.
You're next.
Calling on me?
no.
You said no.
He said
Okay.
no.
Mayor Houston.
Took a while to get there, but he said no. As much as I appreciate what the developers have done and moved things around, I can't go there. So I'm a no.
Ms. Garza.
No.
Mr. Gonzalez.
I'm a no.
Mr. Mendoza.
No.
All right, Mr. Prather.
Aye?
You said aye?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 5-2.
Fails.
I'm
No.
sorry, fails 5-2.
The
I was
vote being
concentrating
5
so
noes
much.
and 2
5-2.
yeses, the
And
motion
2
has failed.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that if we're not moving to approve, we continue with a motion to do something else, which would be the alternate. So if you don't make a motion to deny it, it just kind of
Lingers.
lingers, and a motion to deny would close this case
I'm
out.
aware of that,
Okay, that's all.
and I'm not making a motion to deny. I'll allow anyone else to make a motion to deny if you wish.
I would like to give more flexibility to see if something better can come along.
That's why I wasn't going to make a motion to deny. I would certainly entertain if a council member did,
I
but
think you still come back if it's a significant difference on the.
even with a motion to deny, if it's a significant difference. And
Therefore, I make the motion to deny. And, but like I said, they can still come back, as long as that's something.
Did you make a motion to deny?
He made a motion to deny, and I was writing it down, then I was going to see if there was a second on the motion to deny.
I'll second it.
Okay. So Ms. Garza made the second, and any conversation?
I would appreciate hearing Mr. Prather's rationale, like, about the, leaving, like, flexibility, like, what, or how does that impact, like, a schedule versus denying it?
Well, you know, if the applicant developer wants to produce something that could alleviate the concerns that he's heard tonight and the joint committee, that, you know, if it came back to us, that we could approve it. I mean, obviously, something's gonna go there. It's an ideal location for a lot of things. You know, there's Amazon, there's gonna be a lot of manufacturing, distribution. You know, it's really meant for that, in that area of town. So I just want to try to give the most options, paths to get something that all parties could agree to.
Yeah, I'd prefer to have control, somewhat control over what goes there,
Right.
as opposed to what by right can go there.
So then they would be able to come back and just build on this application versus starting brand new with this super significant
If
change?
we, if
They
we,
could build a general commercial now, which is what it's already zoned for.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they could build stuff with all the trucks and everything right now, there's nothing to do about it.
Well, even if we had approved this, there's no guarantee that's what's going to happen.
I'm saying though, in general commercial right now, they could build exactly what you don't want with all the trucks and everything. But if you're
Ms.
working with
Hernandez,
them, they
how
can build what we want.
Truck intensive can you get in general commercial? I brought the new code with me, but I didn't bring the old code.
In the packet on page, and my number's going to be different because I stuck some slides in here, but it's going to be right around 442, 443.
The comparison pages?
Yes, there is the use table from Chapter 9, which is the Legacy District, which general commercial is, and it lists all of the uses. So, quick
starts-
summary, there's a lot of offices.
A lot of stuff.
It starts on 443 of our packet.
Can you name all the stuff?
Let me.
How long would you like to be here?
Yeah.
We can read it.
There are a lot of offices, retail-type businesses, service businesses.
Restaurants, woodworking shop, auto muffler shop. There's some things that are conditional, auto repair, tire repair, car wash, full-service car wash, limo taxi service. I'm looking for the more industrial-type uses. That's what I'm looking for.
So we would need to go to probably page
Electronic
450
assembly.
for y'all.
Electronic assembly, high-tech manufacturing with a conditional use permit, a microbrewery, outside storage, a research lab, those all take conditional use.
The intent of the old general commercial district was to allow more retail type and not industrial. So when you get to that industrial page, there's not a whole lot there.
That's right, most of it's blank. Auction sales that are non-vehicle, a feed and grain store. There you go.
Do a taxidermist.
Portable building sales and a taxidermist.
That's a nice smell.
And there's a few others. So there's a motion to deny on the table. It has been seconded, so it is before us for a vote. Other comments?
The only thing I'll clarify is if we approve the motion to deny, they cannot come back with this particular application for 1 year. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so that would mean they could not come back with LI. Could they come back with HC? Could they come back with HI?
I would have to go back and check their HC, whether the withdrawal met any of the criteria in the code.
Okay.
But I'm not certain if they couldn't come back with HC. Could they come back with HI? They could come back with any number of things that the Chapter 4 allows.
If we get to the point of my proposal once before, which working title of business park, they could apply for that?
Yes, ma'am. If it's in the, when it is in the code,
When it
yes, ma'am.
becomes a thing.
Yes, ma'am. They could apply for
legitimate
that.
thing, and I'm using that, not to tell them what to do, but I'm using that as an example of what they could come back with.
Yes, ma'am.
Even without, with a denial, but they come back with a denial. Mr. Gonzalez.
Mayor, I think he can still come back as long as it's a difference than what they're
Yeah.
presenting now.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's light industrial. The picture up there doesn't matter. They can come back with a different picture, but it's still light industrial. So I don't know how that would, that's why I don't want to deny. I
Yeah.
want to give them
Yeah,
some
let's go.
options.
Okay. Well, and I'm all for that as well. And I appreciate your second my motion, but I would,
That's fine.
with all this conversation, I would like to give a second option, another.
So are you withdrawing your motion to
Yes,
deny?
ma'am.
All right. Are you okay with that?
Yes, ma'am, I appreciate the conversation.
And I hope the developer has heard the temperature and the comments from the council and just can pivot and bring something back.
It looks like you got ants in your pants. Can we ask them if they have something else to say?
I would
or-
be happy for them to say whatever they would want to say.
Yeah.
One, both, that's fine. You'll
Yeah.
just need to approach
And
the podium.
I meant that respectfully.
Yeah. I would have said you look a little antsy. Or like you want to say something.
So if, without the denial, I guess this is more of a question for Mr. Hernandez, but I guess we sit down and try to come up with another option and then bring it back in front of y'all, or does it go back to committee, or how does that work?
It's a question that I need to ask, a good question. If they come back with something different, do y'all want it to come directly to council, or would you like for it to go through the committee first?
The committee?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'd like
Committee?
Okay.
Committee?
Fine with that.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Hernandez would coordinate.
The
all
committee
that.
that was created back in
Yes, sir.
December?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then one other question too for Ms. Hernandez, and don't ever really like to see P and Z have to see an item twice, but if there was a substantial change, and I know that, they don't get to vote on the restricted covenants and those kind of things, but would there be a potential opportunity for P and Z to relook at that if there were substantial
Okay,
changes?
hold on. If it's a different zoning classification, would it have to go back to P and Z? No, because if it's
depends.
less.
If it's a less intense zoning district, our caption allows you to approve something less intense, which on that list of intensity, heavy commercial is probably the only thing below that. And then you'd get to commercial, which is similar to general commercial, which they're trying to change. City Council has in the past remanded items back to Planning and Zoning Commission, so if you felt that there was a change and the Planning Commission would want to hear it again, we've done that before.
In fairness, Mayor, I would like it to go back to P and Z.
That's why I was trying to determine if
Well-
it's it's a different zoning category, we want to go back to P and Z.
And
If it's not a different zoning category, committee,
Committee.
depends on what the difference is. Are y'all
And it
okay
still
with,
takes supermajority
with
to
that
get-
distinction?
Well, and I want to clarify one more
I'll
thing
ask
with
that
Ms.
question.
Hernandez, if I could also.
I don't think so.
If they came back with a lighter zoning option, the P and Z recommendation for denial would still stand, is that correct?
That's what we were just asking. Would that take us,
To a supermajority requirement,
Supermajority?
even though they were going to a less intense zoning?
Barbara and I are gonna make faces at each other for a minute.
well,
Because I will
there's
tell you,
whether we can and then whether we should.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think it should go back to P and Z
Yeah.
and go through the route, even though
Yes.
On first blush, without speaking with our legal department, I would say that the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation for denial was on this application.
Right.
So if it were to change at City Council, that may be a reason for y'all to send it back.
I agree with that statement.
Thank you.
Yay.
Well, the other part of that just creates one more opportunity for a public hearing too, and public input, but,
So if it's different zoning category, go back to
Yes.
P and Z?
yes.
I see a yes, I see a yes, I see a no, I see a yes. I'm a
Regardless,
yes.
we're gonna
I'm
send
a
it back
yes,
to P and Z.
that'll just be cleaner. It's a new application, it's,
We went through the process.
yeah.
Well, and I think we've had enough discussions too, that P and Z will be aware that if there is some restricted covenants, they would like to see, even though they can't vote on that, that they would be aware, we would be very open to that and to have a thorough discussion on their end on that too.
Yeah, well, and we have what they've offered, which I thought was really good, so.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the applicants' time and energy in this. I know
Yep.
you guys have been at this a long time, and meeting with the committee and trying to find some middle ground. This is just a tough one, guys. So-
Yeah. Okay, so right now, did you have something else for us?
No.
Waiting for,
Just
okay,
letting my laptop rest.
okay. I believe that we have voted. And we can now close this out if there's no other
We did get a
conversation.
removal of the.
He withdrew his motion and she withdrew her second.
Yes.
So I believe we have closed this item out. And seeing as how we've been here almost 2 hours, we're going to take a break before we take up item 13, which was pulled from the consent. It is 7:53. Be back at 8:05, please. Turn from our recess at 8:05, and we are back to item 13, which was pulled from the consent agenda. Ms. Trevino.
Consider approval of Resolution 2023-71R, authorizing the submission of 4 subdivision participation forms to the Office of the Attorney General of the State of Texas to secure the city's participation in settlement of additional class action lawsuits against opioid distributors and manufacturers, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, before the deadline of April 18, 2023, authorize the city manager or her designee to execute all documents necessary for the city to participate in the settlement and declare an effective date.
Okay, I need a motion to discuss, and then I'll ask Ms. Garza.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Gleason, seconded by Mr. Scott. Ms. Garza.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like a status update regarding the funds from the first settlement that we opted into.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chase Stapp, Assistant City Manager. And I believe it was 2 weeks ago, we received notification from the Attorney General's office. In fact, there was an attached ACH deposit form, and Ms. Reyes signed that. And so we should be receiving a little over $300,000 in funding very soon. I'm hoping in the coming days. We would then talk to purchasing and legal most likely, and potentially come back to council with a plan to start using some of that funding. We would like to find a local partner that would help us with the treatment and prevention component of the acceptable uses of this funding.
Excellent. I appreciate that. So we are gonna get like the plan to, and approve that, or like what are the next steps?
Yeah, I think council ultimately is going to have to approve an allocation plan for that funding. I mean, any scenario I can see other than whatever we would use as staff, for example, to maybe procure some more Narcan for first responders or something like that, which would be a pretty small number.
Mhm.
The big bulk of this, I think, is probably going to have to be allocated to a community partner that can do prevention and treatment, education, things like that. And so that would have to come back to council.
Cool, yeah. So I think I just wanted to emphasize that, yeah, in order for this council to be able to make responsible decisions on like the best, like future steps on how to use this money and take care of our constituents, I think anything that's brought to us should be evidence-based. So for example, toolkits created by harm reduction organizations. I know there's, I think it's called the Texas Harm Reduction Alliance in Austin. That's a good resource. And then recommendations created by entities such as the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Medicine. So just like beyond things like arming, our officers with Narcan and all that, just like really focusing on like the public health perspective, and all that. So that's just, I just wanted to state that and ask that question. I appreciate the response, and then just hoping that staff will research what the county is doing with their piece of the pie, right? And then how we can complement their work or fill in any gaps.
I certainly will. I will tell you that when this funding notice first became available in 2021, I reached out to the county to see, because there's an allocation that they could receive separate from ours as well.
Yes, sir.
At that time, they weren't sure if they were going to opt in like we did or fight their own fight, so to speak, to maybe get a little more money. Most political subdivisions are opting in like we did. And so I'll have to get back with them and see what they chose to do and see if they're about to receive their funding as well, see how we can partner.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Stapp. I think
welcome.
that's it. I appreciate you guys pursuing more opportunities to secure funding to tackle this very serious issue.
And what I will say is that we have reached out to a community partner that deals with this population, more regularly, and so that they're more trained in some of the things to know how to best serve our neighbors that are dealing with substance abuse and things like that. And so we would be looking at trying to see if it's not partnering with the county, partnering with someone that specializes in this to make sure that we're making best use of the funding. So that's something that we're investigating, and we would bring back an agreement if we decide to go that route for council for your approval.
Thank you.
I think this would be one for the Core 4 to look at, definitely, potentially, anyway. Are the universities open for this funding too, for this settlement?
No, this money was actually slated for distribution to political subdivisions. Now, if they wanted to partner with a university in their community, that's always an option. If the university potentially could offer some services to our community to help with this, then we could look at that.
I just wasn't sure if they were on the radar, if they were getting their own funding or not.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, whatever, like, there's such a unique opportunity to have resources for such a monster of a problem that has been historically not poured into. Just like, we don't have services to tackle addiction in San Marcos. And the ones that we do have wait lists, and they're very limited. So, yeah, anything we can do to capitalize on partnerships is great. Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Mr. Trevino, let's vote.
Okay, Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
And Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, and I believe we are now on, are we on item 17?
No, ma'am. 15.
We're on 15, okay.
Okay. Consider approval of Resolution 2023-72R, approving the purchase of a 2024 Spartan pumper truck from Metro Fire Apparatus Specialists, Inc. through HGAC contract FS 1219 for use by the fire department in the amount of $1,027,778. Authorize the city manager or her designee to execute the appropriate purchasing documents on behalf of the city and declare an effective date.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I'll give Mr. Gleason the motion and Mr. Scott the second.
I don't want the second.
Any other discussion?
That 300,000 we were just talking about would actually cover this deficit between the $1 million. Just saying.
I don't believe
I
we
know,
can
I'm
spend
just-
it that way, Mr. Scott. Okay.
Let's vote. Okay. Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
And Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
We are now to item 16.
Consider approval of Resolution 2023-73R, awarding a contract to Aaron Concrete Contractors, LLC, to provide construction services for the Hills of Hayes Drainage Improvements Project in the amount of $3,152,030, authorizing the city manager or her designee to execute the contract on behalf of the city and declare an effective date.
Motion to approve.
For a motion, we have one by Mr.
Second.
Scott, seconded by Mr. Gleason. Questions?
I have a question, Mayor.
Mr. Gonzalez?
If this project's not completed in a timely manner, is there going to be penalties for them?
Sean Condor, Assistant Director of Capital Improvements. Yes, all our construction contracts have liquidated damage in there. And so we will track the weather delays during construction, any change orders that have days, and if the contractor exceeds the allowed amount, we would charge liquidated damages. Typically ranges in the range of $850 to $1,000 per day for construction.
Okay, we just don't want to make sure it doesn't prolong like the other project we had recently. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Condor. Mr. Gleason?
The only comment I got is I'm glad to see this is another neighborhood that has needed this drainage project for a long time. And so I'm glad to see it get put in and get done. It's going to be a big improvement for them out there. They need it.
All right. Mr. Trevino, let's vote.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
And Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And we're now to item 17.
Consider approval of Resolution 2023-74R, filling a vacancy on the Board of Directors of the Alliance Regional Water Authority, ARWA, and declaring an effective date. Sorry.
Okay, council, this is my slot that is up.
Be a motion, Mayor.
I'll nominate
You want to go back?
Mayor Houston.
Well, I was just going to say that first and then ask for a motion. Just to make sure they know,
You've been
All right,
told.
Mayor.
because they might not have known. So,
Motion to
Mr. Gleason, you got a
select
motion?
I nominate Mayor Houston to
Thank you.
continue her service on the Regional Water Authority Board.
Was that a second for Mr. Scott?
Yeah.
Okay,
And we thank you for your service, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
you're welcome.
Yes, yes, we don't realize how valuable her service is on that.
And thank you for your service,
Yes,
newcomer Gleason.
yeah, a couple of years now.
All right. We'll vote.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
And Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, and now we are to item 18.
Discuss and consider appointments to fill vacancies on the following boards and commissions and provide direction to staff. A, Cemetery Commission. B, Ethics Commission. C, Main Street. D, Neighborhood Commission. E, Parking Advisory Board. F, Senior Citizen Advisory Board. G, Zoning Board of Adjustments.
Okay, council, get your grid. And we need to look at these. And first is cemetery. And I would like to nominate Nathan Garza, who's actually here with us this evening. And there's one slot, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Which one?
So I will nominate Nathan Garza. Any other nominations? If not, we will vote.
Okay, Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Okay, we nominate Mr. Garza.
All right. For ethics review, we need 2. And I would like to put Rosie Morris's name
I'll second that.
in for, I've known her for many, many years. I believe she would be great here.
Which one is that?
If not, I would also like to place the name of Jeffrey Smithson.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'll do Victoria Raymond.
Okay. We have 3. Are there any others? If not, we will need to vote for 2. And if you would, let's just go with first name. So when Ms. Trevino calls your name, if you would give her 2 names of the list of Rosalind, Rosie, Jeffrey, and Victoria.
Mr. Scott.
Oh, man, I'm just still writing stuff down. I heard Mr. Rockymore, is that correct?
No,
Who was, okay, right.
no, Mr. Rockymore is serving on Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, that's one. How about,
No, it was Rosie Morris that I said.
okay, Rosie, sorry.
Mhm.
Okay, so.
That I had nominated.
Okay, that sounds good. And then the last name was Smitten on the other guy?
Smithson.
Smith Springs. Yeah, I guess those will be my 2.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Gleason.
Rosie and Jeffrey.
Mayor Houston.
Sticking with Rosie and Jeffrey.
All right, Ms. Garza.
Rosie and Victoria.
What was the first one, I'm sorry?
Rosie.
Rosie.
Rosie, okay. And then Mr. Gonzalez.
Rosie and Victoria.
Mr. Mendoza.
Rosie and Jeffrey.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Prather.
Rosie and Jeffrey.
Okay, and the majority votes is Rosalind and Jeffrey.
All right. Next up is Main Street.
And we just need 1.
And we only need 1, and it's resident, correct?
Correct.
All right, do we have any nominations? We have 3 business owners who have applied, which is really good.
Let's get back to those applications.
Well, let me just go ahead and put this out there, that Joanna Whitt is also interested in Parking Advisory Board. We need a business owner. She is a business owner in the district, and she is the only one. So I have marked her for parking, which narrows down the choices for Main Street down to 2 people.
Am I allowed to ask, what business does Mr. Bradley own?
On his application, we have Davenport.
Okay, Davenport, thank you.
And the other person has, I think he said, I wrote down 2 convenience stores and a new store, I think it's New Arabian Nights. Is that
I thought he was
relatively
the owner
new?
of that.
Okay. Maybe it's something he's planned, but
Okay.
it was on his application.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to nominate Dwayne Bradley.
All right. Dwayne Bradley has been nominated by Mr. Prather. Are there other nominations? If not, Ms. Trevino will go, is this a 1-for-1, so you can say yes or no?
All right, Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
And Mr. Scott.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Bradley.
Next is Neighborhood Commission. We
Aye.
need 3, but for Sector 1 or 8, we do not have applications. We have 1 for Sector 2 and 1 for the apartment dweller.
And the other thing I'll throw out here is Mr. Moreno is on the Airport
Airport
Advisory
Commission.
Board, and he did not realize when he applied that he would have to vacate that, and he would rather stay on the airport.
Oh, he doesn't, he didn't realize he couldn't do both.
That's
Okay,
right.
There goes our Sector 2 person.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay.
He thought he could serve on board since the airport only met quarterly, I think, and then,
Yeah, no.
yeah, he'd have to step down from it. He would rather stay on the airport.
Yeah, that's a no.
So we need some neighborhood commission applicants.
We always do. We always do. Okay, are there any other nominations?
Mr. Cruz.
Well, I guess, Mr. James Cruz, because he's the only other applicant. Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
then we will put his name in play, and if there are no other nominations, this will be a one-for-one.
Mayor Houston,
I'll be an aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
And Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Okay, we're now to Parking Advisory Board. We need a business owner,
Mrs. Witt.
and Joanna Witt, whom I do not know, will can fill that role. She's eligible. So I will put her name in play.
What was the name?
Johanna Witt,
Johanna.
Studio 13.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
smoke shop.
Yep.
Very cool.
But she has two different locations now. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
She is the oldest, it's the oldest, I call them head shops now, are they still considered head shop? But an alternative business. She's had it for many decades, and she has two locations, so it's a very
Dope.
prominent business owner in town.
so, well, then, by golly, if we need a business owner, she fits the bill.
Yeah, she's awesome.
So I'll put her name in, and if there are no others, this will be a one-for-one. Ms. Trevino.
Ms. Garza.
Sounds good.
Mr. Gonzalez.
I like it.
Mr. Mendoza.
Absolutely.
Mr. Prather.
Of course.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
And Mayor Houston.
Why not? That's a yes.
Just trying to be different over there, Mayor.
Well, everybody else is trying.
I know what you're.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and now we are to our Senior Citizens Advisory Board. Recall that we have already appointed Nathan Garza to the Cemetery Board.
So then it's just, yes,
Do you want to put that name in play?
sure.
All right. So Ms. Garza is nominating Antonio Jaime, I guess that's how we pronounce it. And any questions? Another one-for-one, Mr. Trevino.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Thank you.
ZBOAA, we need one person who would be filling the alternate 2 slot. Would that be correct, Ms. Trevino?
Correct.
Okay.
Affirmative.
And,
Nominate Victoria Mangalanes.
okay. Other nominations?
The Victoria Mangalanes.
The one that's on the
other
list.
one.
I'm not looking at that list.
Okay. All right. Any other nominations? Another one-for-one, Ms. Trevino.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
And Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
All righty, and that concludes item 18. We are on to item 19. Ms. Trevino.
Yes, ma'am. Hold discussion on gateway sign design concepts and provide direction to staff.
Ms. Reyes.
This will be Ms. Watney.
Sorry, I've been sick. This is about the monument signage on the highway. It was first presented to council on November 1st in 2022. The initial concept presented, and council directed us to come up with some other options that reflect the hill country, and so tonight we will review those options. Next slide. Just as a reminder, the locations, one is south of Posey, and the other one is north of Yarrington on either ends of the city. Next slide. So when designing the monument signs, we wanted to keep our branding consistent both visually and in messaging. And we do that by using variations of our signature colors, which is blue for the river and green for our riparian landscape. We also use limestone to convey the hill country and natural areas and identifiable images that represent nature in the river. We also need them to match our branding that's already out there. That is our wayfinding signage and a soon-to-be updated park wayfinding signs. Next slide, please. So this is like a mood board. So some visual references for the basis of the design. Flowing river currents and wild rice, the limestone-edged banks of the river, and our beautiful hill country vistas. Next slide. And these are just some examples to give you an idea of what the different elements would look like. So if we say backlit lettering, it would be like the one on the far left where the numbers are. And we could also do some lighting between layers, and that would kind of an example in the middle there. And if we talk about a cutout, it could be a negative cutout would be like the one on the right. Next slide, please. So we were asked to come up with a simple classic version. I do want to point out that the date I have on here is wrong.
It's supposed to be 1851, right?
It should be 1951. I
Not
don't know.
19.
I mean, 1851.
1851.
I don't know where 1881 came from. Maybe my brain thought when we started this project, so.
Maybe 5 look like an 8.
Quick question about that, like, Anita with the county mentioned about, and brought up some documents about the 1808. Is there something in statute or that we have to go by, like the founding of the city, or could we use an earlier
What
date
I
that
don't
has-
know a whole lot on it, but what I do know is in 2001, the 150th was celebrated.
Yeah.
And we're going to be celebrating in 2026, the 175. I believe it was, what I understand is it was the date she said, but then it went away for 5 years. My brain is not working. And
Yeah,
then-
those folks did not
didn't
last.
last.
The weather and the situation wasn't good, so they did not stay.
Okay.
Yeah, they were here for a few years and did not stay, but I thought the 1851 was when we were established as a city.
That on our, if you look on our seal, it says 1877. I think they mean as a.
So we can just do
not-
like a throwback Thursday and go with whatever Anita
No,
said.
when we were established as a city.
I like the more historically accurate one, which is what Anita presented.
You know,
We could
Clearly
just
we're
go
playing
with
willy-nilly.
14,000 years ago.
I was going to say, we could go way back.
And I was wondering if we could kind of do some type of thing like, 12,000 or,
Or we could just not put it on there at all.
There's that too.
Oh, there's that. It's like,
I-
we've been
I
here
think-
for a while, is what it could say down there.
established, long
Yeah.
time ago.
I
Take it out.
think the reason there was just that we are a historic city, and that was, we talked about, there wasn't anything on the gateway sign to talk about history. We've got, the hill country, we've got the river, but there wasn't anything historic, and I think that's what the 1851 was going to do. But if we don't know when we were established as a city, I'm thinking maybe we better not use.
Yeah. Also, I think the 77 is when the government was
Became like a
established
home rule
versus
city.
the
1877 was our charter.
our charter versus when people started living here.
The
that's it.
website says founding in 1851.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and get my limestone, Clear Springs and Limestone Ledges book out, but still, I think maybe we could just take it off.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ibarra with Destination Services. If you look on the state's website for history, it goes back to even 1755. So there are many
Multiple
other
dates.
dates. There are many other dates.
Where the monument thingy is, it's got 17-something.
So.
And I know that story, but I couldn't.
So there would be
Spit it out right now.
a lot of feedback and comment on exactly the date, and
Yeah.
you could decide that at a later time, on what direction you want to take as well.
Established long time ago, a long time ago.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Far, far away.
Galaxy far, far away.
Or as we use in much of our literature, it just says, inhabited for 14 million
14,000
years or something, I don't know,
I-
just, yes.
I use
There
that
you
in, I use that in my welcomes at the conference center, and people really sit up and notice and go, wow,
Well, to be
you
honest
are
with you,
unique. They like that.
Mayor, I think we should
Or
kind
they
of
say
focus
you're
on
really
that, just
old.
the indigenous
Wait,
populations.
hold on. We
Oh,
got
sorry.
multiple people talking. Shane?
I'm not talking.
Shane wasn't Matthew.
I mean, just to point out, it's very important that we, not focus, but we incorporate and acknowledge the indigenous population that has been there, like we said, thousands of years. But we can kind of incorporate that. That sets us apart also when we have the powwow here and all those things.
Then what year are we going to use?
That's where we have to go.
I think we need to go back to that
Beginning of time.
17 year.
So what I will say is during the university session that was held last week, and there was a segment that was about San Marcos's history. And one of the things that the librarian, Dr. Smith, talked about, who's studied a lot and has the library collection, the historical collection, he said that San Marcos is it is the longest inhabited city in Texas. So if we wanted to say
In North America.
well, he talked about Texas, but if
Okay.
we want to expand it, we can definitely do that. But I'm just saying, if there's even something like that where it doesn't have necessarily a date, but still goes to the historical context,
Yeah.
then we could look for something like that that could go there. So,
Yeah, if you go to the city's website, Community History, there's the 79-page document that was created for the sesquicentennial. And it starts with San Marcos de Neve and an article by Juan Palomo. And it talks about the beginning time and the fact that those folks, just for various reasons, were not able to stay. Then what we need is a new concept for how we can get, we've been here a long time, that, yeah, in a very short way, and I don't know what that would be, but are y'all okay with letting the creative people figure out what we can do?
I've done a lot of driving across Texas the last few weeks, and I've noticed every gateway sign between here and Houston and here in Corpus and here in Fort Worth. The simpler, the better. The simple ones stand out. They're not
Yeah.
so busy.
Yeah.
And if we can't decide on a date of, just leave it off. Just do something simple with San Marcos. I mean, even Kyle changes their colors with the season. I mean, it's really simple, but I noticed it the day they did. I was like,
Yeah.
they changed their color to green for St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
And they had it red for Christmas. And I think stuff like that, simpler is better. I mean, Buta's is a little too simple. Let's pick on Buta a little bit. But, they didn't really do much at all, but
And the New Braunfels one, I don't know what that window
it's a
thing
bridge.
means.
That's their bridge.
Oh, it's a bridge.
It's their
Oh,
bridge
sorry.
over the river. And it's their bridge over the river. And it actually took me a minute to figure out what it was, but it's their bridge over the Guadalupe.
Well,
So-
and you may not know, Kyle, the red brick is their classic for their downtown, that
Yeah.
red brick is a thing for
Well,
them.
It's just simple, but it pops and it looks good. And so, I mean, look, we had people coming and going since the time, since people have been writing stuff down on walls and caves. And so I just don't know if we're going to be able to decide on a date between 1851,
That's why
1877.
I'm asking that we let
Right.
the creative people come up with another one
Yeah.
or two word concept that doesn't have a number in it.
I think that makes it too busy.
Can we at least look at it?
That's my preference anyway.
I think it doesn't hurt to see what all you come up with. I think what we all agree on is that having a specific date that we don't know is, having a specific date is a no, right?
We just
But
say we're
if-
old.
Yeah.
Established,
Yeah.
very long
Kinda
time.
covered.
It wouldn't hurt
I
to
don't
see
think we need
it.
established.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
I'm
Just take out
willing
the
to
established.
entertain multiple options if there are of what might come up with, but I do agree with Mr. Gleason. The simpler, the better.
Simpler the better.
so I know, and you're not done with your presentation?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just-
let's let her roll
Okay.
on.
So previously, y'all had talked about wanting something simple and classic. So these two designs are a simple way to complement the city's existing brand signage. It uses a limestone base to ground it. The green hill elements can be subtly textured to give it some visual interest, and we can use backlighting on the river currents. A is the simplest form, and B gives the river element a little bit more layers and visual interest. Next slide. These two options of the sign keep the elements from the classic version, but also add an image to give the essence and feel of San Marcos. The center panel could be cut out so that the image is visible either like a negative space or an additional layer that rises above it. There would also be lighting and things like that for these elements. Next slide, please. So if we talk about option C, it uses the cutout of a heron. As you can see, locals identify a heron with San Marcos, and images can be found all over the city. The silhouette of a waterfowl also conveys a message quickly to motorists, which is river, nature, birding, and which is the core to our brand. Next slide, please. D is using a tree silhouette. Locally, trees are also a beloved part of our city. It's using a general image of a tree instead of a specific type. That way it gives you the overall peaceful feeling of nature and outdoors without getting hung up on a particular species. And of course, adjustments will be made to what the leaves and things look like so that the cutout would actually work on the highway. Next slide. And next steps would be sign design and construction, and a gateway monument agreement with TxDOT once we know council's direction, which option you'd like to pursue. Thank you.
Okay, council, what are y'all thinking?
Mayor,
I'll start Mr. Prather, and I'll just come around this way.
I think option D looks really solid. The river, the trees, it really captures what makes San Marcos so special, and the backlighting.
Backlighting, definitely, and I'm leaning a little more towards C, just because I think it brings a, we're putting a waterbird on there, just a little more promotion of the river itself instead of just trees in the river. I mean,
Do we really want more promotion of the river? More
putting a
people hear
gateway
tubers?
sign up.
Yeah, I recently
charge the
saw
parking, yes.
one of these birds on a glass bottom boat tour
Well, and
ride, and it was so majestic, and everybody freaked out. Like, everybody was so excited to see this bird. It was really cool to see.
Well, I'm a birder. We have some unique opportunities around here, but and that's not something, I don't think anybody that I've seen the last few thousand miles I've traveled has something like that on their gateway sign.
So are you a C?
I will tell you, for people that are from San Marcos, I showed some of these too. They don't identify the bird, with San
Yeah.
Marcos.
I don't either.
So
Interesting.
that's something that
I know.
the perspective may differ, from people, but I know that for people who are from San Marcos, the bird wasn't something that resonated with people from San Marcos as being meaningful in that way.
Not
So
really
that's
anything for
just
me.
another perspective.
Well, and that's a great point, and the thing too is when I'm driving down the road looking at them, I'm looking at it from the perspective of driving down the interstate of what that looks like, right? What does that mean for real quick? It may not relate the same thing to the people that live there. That's a very different, I wasn't looking at it when I'm looking at them as a perspective of, if I lived in the city, is that what so I get that, I still think just the
Put on a
name.
bumper sticker.
I think the name and not even having anything else really on there.
Give
With
me a
backlighting.
letter. Or a letter with mods.
I think B.
Okay.
I think B and C were my top two, and I'm leaning towards B now.
B.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think the tree is what we need, and for me, there wasn't enough contrast between the two, and I don't like the tree coming off, because it looks like we ordered the tree and it was too big, and so we put it on there anyway, so I can't do the D. The Waterbird isn't working for me, but even if it did, I think it's too big. I like the plainer one. I don't feel that we have to go with the same basic concept as our gateway signs. If we want to do something completely different, I'm okay with that. But what I like is B, but the river part from D. I think the river part from D is prettier, but I like the slope on B. It's a little taller. But what I don't like on any of them is the stacked rock being that sharp. It doesn't look natural because that's that sharp, straight edge. Something, I don't know what the.
A little more organic.
Or even just straight, yeah, just straight like a fence or part of a house or something. The angle is bothering me, and now that we're taking out the date, we have some more to play with. So I am a modified B with the river from D. Yeah, and the river from D and the straight line on the rocks.
I think you hit on something there, Mayor, with taking.
If we're going. I'm
The
sorry.
river's.
Let me finish up. Straight line on the rocks, it's okay if it's this way, if it's perfectly horizontal. If not, I think it needs to be more, yes,
Well, I
rolling
think
hills.
it could even flow all the way to the base of it. And I mean, when I
Yes.
think of San Marcos, of Kyle, with a gateway to the hill country, right? The hill country starts literally, that's why
Yeah,
they built the interstate
Balcones
here.
Escarpment.
So have the river maybe potentially go all the way down.
I'm good with that.
And have that rock base start there and then maybe stagger it a little bit or go flush across. But I do think taking the river maybe all the way down, that's a nice color all the way.
Mm-hmm. Y'all good with the river coming all the way down and whichever
Yes,
one you
very
like?
much so.
Everybody's
That was
liking
one of
that?
mine.
Okay, that's good. So that's where I am basically B with some modifications. Ms. Garza?
I like C, and it's interesting that you, Stephanie, shared that locals don't identify with it. I asked my family and friends to ask, and it's mostly like young professionals and young adults that I've kind of asked out, because those are the only groups that I have like easy digital access to, like with my family and friends. So like group chats and stuff. And they seem to like the bird. And I do agree with everything the mayor stated with the rocks and the river from D. Is that what you said? You want the river?
B.
From B, okay. Whichever river you said.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do like the difference in the
River from
river on
D.
D. You're right, you're
Yes.
right, you're right.
I wrote down river from D. But it makes me wonder, why didn't we just like do like a community poll or something, I don't know, on Facebook? This is a hard decision to make. Another thing that came to mind was local photographers. I think there's like at least 2 or 3 have posted photos of this bird, and it generated like a lot of comments. I think one had like 500 comments where it's like, wow, that's like, it's so majestic, it's so beautiful, it's like so us. So I don't know, but now I'm questioning my whole life, to be honest.
I think you are.
Like, who am I? Where am I?
Well, the sign with the bird is beautiful.
It is.
I just don't see it as
Right.
San Marcos.
Right. Well, I'm a C, but second
the
would
hills?
be the, I guess,
The modified C a little bit.
yeah, yeah. And then definitely not, anyone, yeah, that's all I got. This is too confusing. It's a difficult choice. They're
Mr.
all so good.
Gonzalez.
I'll make it simple, B, just the way it is, simple, and just get it over with.
What about the river coming all the way down? Are you okay with that?
Like this.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Not the tree though, but the river.
Yeah, this is the river.
But just, actually, we were talking about the river coming all the way down and no rocks there, correct?
Flush to the ground.
Yeah,
They'll
all
make
the way
it
to the
down.
ground.
Oh.
We, Mayor, I think it's gonna look good, but we'll need to find out. But is that okay with you?
That's fine
I
with
think
me.
we've all agreed on that part, and so,
This one.
Mr. Mendoza.
Well, I am spoiled because I live in Rio Vista neighborhood, so the heron, I have nests of them throughout my entire neighborhood, so it's beautiful to see them and hear them in the morning. So to me, it means so much, but I have asked some of the families that live out in Hills of Hayes, live out in Willow Creek, pretty much everywhere else, and they don't quite understand that. So I do like the idea.
Maybe using it actually in the park.
That would be fantastic.
Would be beautiful.
Maybe it's a geographic
I
thing,
think it's
too.
what it is, but again, I'm spoiled because I see these beautiful birds every day. I do love the fact that the river would go all the way to the bottom. The main issue I have here is with the limestone. I definitely want it, like Mrs. Garza said, more feature to it. We've got to do something with that. So I think where I'll stand right now is I'll go C first with the established taken off, and then I'll go B with everything like the changes we made with the limestone and the river going all the way down.
So I think we're all good with the more rugged rocks, more like hill country, even though they are cut stone, the river coming all the way down. And we have 1D. We have 3 Cs and 3 Bs.
Well, my issue with the D was, of course, like you had said, the tree looks like it's going way too out there.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, how do you have the green background and the green leaves? I was afraid it was going to be a big blob.
Okay.
As you're driving down the highway, because you don't have much time. Okay, council, can we come across something that's a
Between B and C.
compromise?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my only thing with the other reason I was kind of leaning towards B over C and was kind of going back and forth is the labeling for San Marcos is bigger on B. If we put the bird on there, you're probably not going to have as big a name on it. And that
It's the
name
same
is.
size.
It is the same size. It's just the graph
Optical
itself.
illusion.
It's taller,
Okay.
that's all.
I mean, that Kyle sign just stands out like a sore thumb.
That's their logo.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's big, right? It's just their name.
Short name.
Yeah, and it's a short name too.
That's where the height of C and D are more prominent, you know?
And I like the tall.
So,
I like the tall.
and maybe so maybe it is some combination, like y'all said, if you wanted to do B and C, is there a possibility of putting the hills behind the heron
Yeah.
or something like that?
I could do a variation of B, like y'all discussed, and then also C. I like a limestone, more of a natural. I did these kind of quick so that it'd be easy to show y'all. So, yeah, I'll see about having the river go all the way down. I think that's a good idea. A lot of it will depend, I don't know enough about construction on what those, if they're made out of something that may have to have
What the
some kind of
mechanics
base.
would
Right,
be.
right.
Yeah.
But we'll get it as close to the bottom as possible.
Yeah.
And then I'll just do a variation of B and C with those.
I do think that C would be a great, I'm going to use the word logo, could be wrong, for our parks. I think that would be wonderful. That'd be a beautiful entrance into where the parking is for City Park.
We can have it
And
there
maybe
too.
some other places, but not on the freeway.
I like on the freeway.
That's where it's beautiful. Wrong location.
Maybe we can have the bird change colors too, like Kyle does their sign.
Yeah.
It could look like a blue heron or a tricolor
Okay,
heron.
so those of you who were a C, which was Mr. Scott, Ms. Garza, Mr. Mendoza, are y'all still a C?
Yes, I just want to
You're a firm
see
C,
it.
okay.
I'm fine with like seeing it.
Okay.
It's just so unique. And that's kind of what I wanted to stand out. We have a beautiful city who has so many different unique aspects to it that I haven't seen anything like this driving up and down 35. I haven't had a chance to go through the rural areas, but
Yeah.
Probably will never see it again.
If this were the 60s, we might have a swimming pig on it.
well, if we could get Ralph as a mascot here, that would be the best thing, but.
And also to keep in
So
mind.
you're coming back with 2?
Two, yes. And just to keep in mind, it's not necessarily always just for the locals, it's for people driving by to give an impression of what
Right.
San Marcos is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's why I like the green, the blue, the river, the, maybe not cut stone, but the hills, so, yeah, all that's great. That's all great.
okay.
That kind of rock at the bottom.
Oh.
It's just crushed, he's just throwing chunks of limestone, and that's kind of what I was
Yeah.
picturing too, is uneven limestone.
Yes.
I mean, I go to
Yeah.
Purgatory all the time, and there isn't any smooth
Very
rock out
natural.
there.
Yeah, but to take
You
that
know,
to,
something a little more
Show it to me.
rugged, that looks a little more natural.
yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
And maybe put the hills,
That's more
like we
limestone
talked
looking.
about.
That is what.
Maybe combine
Put it
the
on
B
the
and C.
camera,
Yeah.
on someone's camera, we can all see it.
To-
Oh,
So
Zoom.
could you let
Zoom
Mr.
camera.
Gonzalez see that one?
So Mayor, one thing where we are right now is.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Is Charlotte can tweak on these, but as she spoke about, we really need to get together and start the conversations with TxDOT on what's allowable, because there are certain requirements that we have to stay within. And then secondly, start working with an architectural firm, a sign designer on, as what Charlotte said, what's constructible, what will look good
Right.
when we transition from these concepts to actual construction. So I think that's where we are now. We've kind of heard what you said. Let us now start working with some professionals, and
Yeah.
we can do some tweaks, and we can show you those
And
afterwards.
What size are we looking at?
20 foot tall and 15 wide. We could go as far as 20 wide, but one location, we can only go 15, so to make them similar.
Wow.
15
How big is the
wide.
Kyle one? Is it like 15 foot tall, probably 12, 15 foot tall?
Well, that's all that's allowable by TxDOT is 20 foot tall by 15 wide. But it may be skinnier, like one of our locations has to be skinnier because of right of ways and,
Okay, is that one right? But they can be 20 by 15.
pardon?
They could potentially be 20 by 15 depending on the right of way.
Right, and which won't look really huge until you're up close.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I know it. Well, I want to, is it Belton? One of them is gigantic.
Maybe they got in
Salado?
before something.
Salado's.
Salados is, yeah.
Is big, real big.
Are
They have
we-
kind of that plant.
Yeah, they've got
Yeah.
agaves grown and
And
everything
it also
else.
depends, I'm not sure what the terrain is like, so like if you look at New Braunfels, theirs is on a steep slope, which is
Yeah.
why, even though their base is this way, it's actually a triangle, upside
Yeah,
down
it
triangle.
is.
'cause
I noticed that their base is at an angle.
Well, and that's true, if there's gonna be land, if it's a hill, land, or, and greenery behind it, or is it gonna stand up with sun, I mean, with the sky behind it? That's gonna be a question, and I don't know. Okay,
It's pretty much a mown area,
Uh-huh.
because remember, we're working between the main lanes
Uh-huh.
and the frontage road. So it is a clear zone.
but isn't it before an overpass? And so the background of the
On, southbound on
I'm thinking
Yarrington.
northbound.
On northbound, it's kind of out in the open, but that's something, again, we can, as we get that design, we can start setting it into the background.
that'd be helpful.
So I think if we've got some direction here, if you let us now move forward so that we can start working on this.
So what she's saying is that, in other words, we're not going to bring back the two concepts before we start working with the constructability people, if that's okay with council. Is that basically, we would get her to do the modifications, we would look at this with TxDOT and with the constructability folks, and then try to see what they say is going to be able to be constructed within the area. So that's really what we would be doing, and so then at that time, we can bring something back and advise about what we are gonna want to move forward with.
Is that 15 foot including where San Marcos hangs off the edge? I forgot to say, I'm not crazy
Yes.
about that, but, okay, so it's like if you look at the picture, it's going to be 15, which means the base is going to be 13 and a half or something?
Something like that.
Okay. Do y'all like the San Marcos hanging off the sign like it is?
I don't. It just kind of.
Okay, that's,
throws it
no,
off a
that's,
little bit.
Well, I think it gets the sign a little bigger and you're not intruding on the river portion of it, I think is part of the idea. You're gonna have to shrink the San Marcos logo quite a bit to fit it in between those two. That's one thing.
not between the two, the river's
Well,
only on one
it's over,
side.
it's sticking over the river and it's sticking out. You're gonna have to shrink both sides of that thing to make it fit on that green.
I think it adds like some dimension.
I
but
just don't like it
care
hanging
either way.
off the edge. I think it's just, but I don't. But that means the sign is smaller because the 15 is the edge of the that. If it wasn't hanging off, we could have the whole thing bigger.
I'm not as worried about it.
I still think we ought to find out what we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
just-
I think that's a great.
then
I
we
think,
can go
I think,
from there.
yeah, if we find out what we can do, and I mean, I think the sign looks less hanging off when it's something like C versus it looking like, it's more pronounced on B. And so that's something we'll just got to see how it looks like once we're.
Again, to me, it looks like we ordered it in parts and that was too big and we said, we're just going to put it on there anyway. It just, I don't know. Us OCD people, we're trouble.
And New Braunfels has theirs like this too, so I know what you're talking about. That's how theirs is. So I think it's some of the artistic element of the sign, but I think let us look at the constructability, and then we can bring something back once we know what can actually be constructed.
Actually-
And look at B and C.
You don't reduce the size of the San Marcos, because that's the 15 feet. You would increase the mass of the rest of the sign, because that's part of the 15 feet. So you wouldn't have to reduce it.
I just want that to
Okay.
be very, very prominent. I mean, no matter what happens, the name is the most important part of this.
Yeah. But that would stay the same, the sign, the rest of the sign would be bigger. Okay.
So we good to move forward on
Are y'all
those
good
next
with
steps?
letting them get started and do what we gotta do with the text dot and all the other
I
stuff?
don't think there's any sense us
And
discussing anymore
see
until we find out
what's-
what we can do
So we'll
anyway.
go
What's
through B and
feasible.
C and see what's feasible. Charlotte will do some variations.
All right.
Yep. Thank you so much for your hard work.
So,
I do want to
Moving on.
recognize Charlotte on this. She has spent a lot of time, and we
Absolutely.
are very fortunate that we have her kind of talent
Yes, we are.
within staff, because we would have paid an external person to do this, and it would have been a lot of money, and they wouldn't have known the community as well as Charlotte does. So thank you, Charlotte, for all your work.
Yes. And your patience with all the,
Yeah.
because even as much as
And-
y'all have given feedback, we've given feedback before it's come to y'all. So very much appreciate your patience.
okay.
Opinions,
Let's
opinions.
Move on to, item 20.
Executive session in accordance with the following: A, Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney to seek advice regarding legal matters related to the regulation of short-term rentals. B, Section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code, real property, to hold discussion regarding community development block grant disaster recovery, CDBG-DR, affordability period, and Section 551.071, consultation with attorney regarding the CDBG-DR affordability period. Section C, 551.089 of the Texas Government Code, security devices and security. Sorry, ma'am, I messed up. Yeah.
Oh, it's section.
Yes. And then 551.074 of the Texas Government Code, personnel matters, duties, and responsibilities of public officers and employees related to computer security and the use of information technology. And Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney to seek legal advice regarding related law.
And we completed our executive session, which is also posted at our 3 o'clock work session, and we do not need to go into executive session, so we can move on to item 20.
Consider action by motion or provide direction to staff regarding the following executive session item held during work session and/or regular meeting. A, Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney to seek advice regarding legal matters related to the regulation of short-term rentals. B, Section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code, real property, to hold discussion regarding community development block grant disaster recovery, CDBG-DR affordability period. And Section 551.071, consultation with attorney regarding CDBG-DR affordability period. C, Section 551.089 of the Texas Government Code, security devices, and Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code, personnel matters. Duties and responsibilities of public officers and employees related to computer security and the use of information technology. Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney to seek legal advice regarding related law.
Okay, for item A, we provided direction to staff. B, we provided direction to staff. And C, we had the discussion and direction to staff. So that concludes item 21. We now have question and answer with press and public. Do we have anyone in chambers wishing to ask a question? Do we have anyone online, Ms.?
I don't see Ms. Capoletto.
Okay, so we have no one for this one, so I would
Motion to
accept.
adjourn.
Second.
Let's vote very quickly.
Okay, Mr. Prather. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Mr. Mendoza.
And we are out at 9 o'clock. I was trying so hard to make